Liverpool, 1800 and something. A city pressed tightly together, swollen beyond its limits. Around 78,000 people packed into streets that were never designed to hold so many bodies, so many footsteps, so much life moving all at once. These streets haven't been properly cleaned in weeks, maybe months. Horses pass through constantly, pulling carts, hauling goods, stopping wherever they please, leaving behind warm piles that sink slowly into the mud. Chimneys line the skyline, coughing out thick coal smoke day and night, the air never quite clearing. Everything smells of damp stone, soot and waste. Somewhere inside all this noise and movement, you are simply trying to make it through another day, not thriving, not dreaming, just surviving until tomorrow. This is what it was actually like to live in one of the most powerful, most dangerous, and most foul-smelling cities on Earth. Before we go any further, let yourself settle where you are. If you're listening to this as you drift towards sleep, take a moment now, adjust your pillow, turn it until it feels just right beneath your head. Pull your blanket a little higher, maybe tuck it gently around your shoulders. Let your body sink down into the mattress. Notice how soft it feels, how even and steady the surface beneath you is. Notice how clean your sheets are, how warm and safe you feel in this quiet moment. Take a slow breath in and then let it out again. Pay attention to the air in your room. It doesn't sting your lungs. It doesn't taste like smoke or coal or manure. It doesn't make your eyes burn or water. That's a luxury you probably don't think about very often. Clean air, a soft bed, a room that belongs to you. Hold on to that feeling for a moment. Remember it, because where we're going now, none of those things exist. Your eyes open to darkness, not the gentle darkness of a bedroom at night, softened by curtains and familiarity. This is a heavier darkness, damp, thick, underground, the kind that presses in on your face like a wet cloth. You're lying on something that might once have been a mattress, long ago. Now it's little more than a sagging sack filled with straw that smells like it's been soaked and dried and soaked again more times than anyone could remember. This is home. A cellar beneath a house on one of Liverpool's back courts, 8 feet below street level. The ceiling hangs low overhead. If you stand up straight, the crown of your head brushes against cold, damp stone. There's no window, no fresh air, no chimney or vent, just a narrow set of stairs leading up to a wooden trapdoor that opens into the courtyard above. 45,000 people in this city live like this, underground, in cellars, like human moles burrowing beneath the grand Georgian buildings above. Buildings paid for with cotton money and sugar money and other kinds of money that no one likes to talk about anymore. You're not alone down here. Against the far wall is your sister, curled into herself, knees pulled tight to her chest. She's 14 years old and works at the rope factory down by the docks. She hasn't stopped coughing for 3 weeks. In the corner, there's an older man. You think his name might be George. He pays 2 pence a night to sleep here. When he breathes, there's a rattle deep in his chest, like something loose that never quite settles. And near the stairs, a woman with a baby who arrived yesterday. You don't know her name, she doesn't say much. The baby fusses softly, then goes quiet again. 5 people. 1 underground room. The smell is something you've learned to ignore, mostly. The same way you ignore the dull ache in your back from dock work, or the constant gnawing in your stomach. Human bodies packed together in a space with no air circulation. Chamber pots emptied into the courtyard above. Their contents sometimes seeping back down through the stones when it rains heavily. Mold creeps across the walls. The sourness of unwashed clothes, unwashed skin, damp straw, and old breath hangs in the air. But the strange thing is, you don't really notice it anymore. This is just what air smells like to you. It's the only air you've ever known. You know it's morning because you can hear the city waking up above your head. Footsteps striking cobblestones, the hollow clatter of wooden cartwheels, someone shouting in Irish, someone else answering back in Welsh, a baby crying somewhere nearby. And then the bells, deep, steady, resonant bells rolling through the stone. St. Nicholas Church, the sailors' church. Its spire rises over the waterfront like a finger pointing toward heaven. Sailors returning after months at sea would spot that spire first and know they'd finally made it back to Liverpool. You count the bells slowly. 5, 6 in the morning. Time to move. Your muscles protest as you sit up. Every part of you aches from yesterday's work, hauling cotton bales up from ship holds, carrying heavy barrels of sugar across the quayside, loading and unloading cargo until your arms felt like they might simply give out and detach themselves from your body. And for what? 4 shillings and 6 pence? A few pints? Enough to pay for this cellar, buy some bread, and maybe save a few pennies for the inevitable days when there's no work at all. Because the work always dries up eventually. That's the thing about being a dock worker in Liverpool. There's no guarantee, no steady wage. Every morning you show up at the dock gates and wait. You hope someone picks you out of the crowd. You hope ships have come in overnight. You hope today isn't the day you walk back empty-handed while your sister coughs herself to sleep and the baby next door cries because there's no milk. You pull on your shirt, the same shirt you wore yesterday, the same one you'll wear again tomorrow. You own exactly 2 shirts, and the other one is too torn to be decent. This one has holes too, but smaller ones. More respectable holes. Your trousers are held up with a length of rope because the button broke months ago. Your boots have holes in the soles stuffed with newspaper. The paper turns soggy and falls apart every time it rains, which is often. This is Liverpool. It's always raining, or about to rain, or just finished raining. You climb the narrow stairs and push open the trapdoor. Cool, grey light spills down into the cellar for a brief moment before you pull yourself up into the courtyard. A court, by the way, is a small enclosed yard, surrounded on all sides by tall buildings. Narrow, crowded, damp, the walls rise up close together, blocking most of the sky. Laundry hangs overhead on sagging lines, water pools in the uneven stones underfoot. Every sound echoes slightly, trapped between brick and brick, and this is just the beginning of another ordinary day. You can only get in or out through a single narrow passageway barely 3 feet wide that leads from the court to the main street. There's no paving underfoot, just bare earth worn smooth by countless boots, which turns instantly to mud whenever it rains. Which, again, is almost always. The ground never really dries here. It simply shifts between damp, slick and fully saturated, depending on the hour and the weather. In one corner of the courtyard stands a single water pump. This pump serves everyone who lives here, around 40 people, 40 households sharing one handle, one spout, one unreliable source of water. People queue here morning and night, waiting their turn, filling buckets and jugs, sometimes arguing quietly when patience runs thin. And right beside the pump, close enough that the smell never quite leaves the water, is the privy. One privy for 40 people. It's nothing more than a pit dug into the ground, covered by a wooden seat that's been repaired and re-repaired, so many times it barely holds together. When the pit fills up, which happens regularly, someone is supposed to come and empty it. In theory. In practice, it often overflows. The contents spread out across the courtyard, seeping into the mud, sticking to boots, carried unknowingly back into homes. During heavy rain, it sometimes leaks down through the stones and into the cellars below, mixing with damp straw and mould. This is why doctors keep saying Liverpool is the unhealthiest town in England. The average age of death here, for working people, is 17 years old. In the countryside, people often live into their 30s. In London, they reach their mid-20s on average. But in Liverpool, if you're working class, you're lucky to see 20. You're 19 now, already living on borrowed time, at least according to the numbers. The air in the courtyard is thick with coal smoke. Every house in Liverpool burns coal. Every factory, every ship in the harbour keeps its boilers running. The smoke rises, but it doesn't go far. Low clouds hang over the city, trapping it all beneath them. The result is a permanent haze, a yellow-grey fog that settles into every crack and crevice. By the end of the day, the inside of your nose will be black, your spit will be black, your handkerchief, if you have one, will be black. That's just how it is. And then there are the horses. Liverpool runs on horses, thousands of them. Every cart, every carriage, every delivery wagon depends on muscle and hooves. And horses produce an impressive amount of waste, something like 15 to 30 pounds per horse per day. Multiply that by the thousands working these streets, and you get mountains of manure piling up faster than anyone can shovel it away. The streets are literally covered in it. In summer, it dries and crumbles into a fine dust that rises with every step and gets into everything. In winter, It mixes with rain and mud to form a thick, glue-like paste that can pull the boots right off your feet. Right now in the early morning chill, it's somewhere in between. Wet enough to squelch underfoot, dry enough to release that. Unmistakable smell, horse, smoke, sewage, unwashed humans. This is the perfume of Liverpool in 1800 and something. You make your way through the passage and out onto the street. The sun hasn't properly risen yet, but the city is already awake, already moving, already loud. Carts rumble past toward the docks, wheels clattering over uneven stones. Street sellers set up their spots, calling out in half a dozen different accents. Women walk by with baskets balanced on their heads. Children dart between traffic with the careless confidence of those who've grown up around danger. Dogs nose through piles of garbage, tails wagging faintly. In the gutter, a dead horse lies on its side. It's been there at least 2 days. No one does anything about a dead horse until it starts to rot, and even then, no one is in much of a hurry. Eventually someone will come and saw it into pieces small enough to haul away. Until then, people simply step around it and carry on. So do you. The buildings rise on either side of the street. Tall, narrow, brick, their surfaces stained black with soot. They were probably respectable houses once, 20 years ago, 30, before the population exploded, before 10 families were squeezed into buildings meant for one. Now the windows are cracked or boarded over. Doors hang crooked on their hinges. Washing lines stretch overhead, dripping onto passers-by below. Every few yards there's a dark opening between buildings. Another court, another cluster of families living underground. More chamber pots emptied from upper windows. More children playing in mud that isn't really mud. And yet, mixed in with all this poverty and squalor, there are signs of extraordinary wealth. At the end of the street stands a Georgian townhouse. Clean windows, freshly painted door, a polished brass knocker catching the early light, a servant sweeping the front steps. These are the homes of the merchants, the ship owners, the men who built their fortunes on the triangular trade. Liverpool to Africa, Africa to the Americas, the Americas back to Liverpool. A circuit of commerce that made this city one of the richest in the entire British Empire. The slave trade was formally abolished a few years ago, in 1807, but the wealth it created is still here, visible in the elegant Georgian squares, in the grand public buildings, in the fine clothes of merchants' wives as they're helped into their carriages, and in the cellars where people like you live underground because there's nowhere else you can afford. That's Liverpool, a city of extremes, grand wealth and crushing poverty existing side by side, sometimes literally next door to one another, the rich stepping over the poor in the street, the poor staring up at windows they'll never see the inside of. You turn a corner, and there it is, the waterfront. Even after all these years, it still takes your breath away. Not because it's beautiful exactly, more because of the sheer scale of it. The docks stretch along the riverfront for what feels like miles. Quays and basins and warehouses and cranes crowd together in a dense maze of wood and stone and iron. Ships of every size press against one another. Tall ships with masts forming a forest against the sky. Smaller vessels weaving between them like insects. Beyond it all, the River Mersey rolls past, grey and restless, dotted with even more ships waiting their turn. This is where Liverpool's power comes from, this vast, complicated, constantly moving machine of commerce. Cotton from America, sugar from the Caribbean, tobacco, coffee, rum, timber from Canada, iron ore from wherever they happen to be digging it out of the ground these days. And somewhere in the middle of it all you step forward, ready for another long day, breathing in air that smells like work, and waiting to see whether today will be one of the days you're chosen. All of it flows through Liverpool, every crate, every barrel, every bale, and all of it is handled by men like you. By the time you reach the dock gates, a crowd has already formed, a dense knot of bodies pressed together, boots scuffing on stone, breath fogging faintly in the cool morning air. There must be 100 men here, maybe more, all of them hoping for work, all of them knowing, quietly, that there won't be enough for everyone. You recognize faces as you wait. The tall Irishman with the crooked nose, broken long ago and never set right. The older fellow who used to sail before a winch took 3 of his fingers and left him unfit for the sea. A small group of Welsh lads standing close together, speaking softly in their own language, keeping to themselves. The same men, day after day, drifting from gate to gate, measuring their chances against the weather and the ships in the river. You ease forward, inch by inch, until you're near the front. This matters. The hiring foremen almost always pick from what's closest. If you're stuck at the back, you might as well not have come at all. Being seen is half the battle. A man climbs onto a wooden crate. He's broad through the middle, with a red, shiny face. The kind of face that comes from too much beer and too much meat, eaten while the people below go hungry. He's one of the master stevedores. One of the men who organize the labor. One of the men who decides whether you work today or go home empty-handed. He scans the crowd slowly, eyes moving from face to face, with the detached interest of someone selecting livestock at market. Nobody speaks. Nobody shifts their weight. 100 men holding their breath, waiting to be chosen, already knowing most of them won't be. He points. You, not you, you. His finger moves again. There, the big one. No, not you, the other big one, you and you. The gesture is casual, almost bored. His finger sweeps across the crowd like a scythe, cutting away the men he wants and leaving the rest behind. Then his hand stops on you. You step forward. You try not to look eager. Try not to show the relief washing through you. You move as if this was expected, as if there was never any doubt. You're in. Today at least you'll work. Today you'll eat. Today your sister might have enough for a little broth to soothe her coughing. Tomorrow can wait. The stevedore waves you and the others toward the quay. Behind you the unchosen begin to drift away. Some will try their luck at another gate. Some will look for different work. Some will go home to tell their families there's nothing today. You don't look back. You can't afford to. The clock is already ticking. The ships are waiting. Somewhere beneath their wooden decks, hundreds of tons of cargo need to be moved by human hands. Your hands. The hull of the ship rises above you like a cliff face, dark and streaked with tar. The smell here is different from the streets. Salt and river water, tar and wet rope. The musty sweetness of cotton bales that have spent weeks in the hold. A hint of fish, something sharp that might be spices. A ladder leads up to the deck. You climb without thinking, hand over hand. Your body knows this routine even if your mind is still catching up. At the top, a crewman glances at you briefly and jerks his head toward the open hatch. Down you go, into the belly of the ship. It's dim down here. Oil lamps hang from hooks, casting just enough light to keep you from stumbling. The hold is packed tight with cargo. Massive bales of cotton, each weighing several hundred pounds. Barrels of sugar, their sides sticky and faintly sweet. Crates of tobacco that make your eyes sting when you get too close. Your job is simple. Pick it up. Carry it out. Set it down on the quay. Go back for more. Over and over again. For 12 hours. Maybe 14, however long it takes to empty the hold. There are no breaks. No food provided. No water unless you brought your own. You did bring your own. A leather flask filled from the courtyard pump this morning. The water tastes of rust and something else you try not to think about. But it's wet. And after a few hours of hauling cotton, you'll drink anything. The first bale is always the hardest. Cold muscles straining against dead weight. You sink the iron hook into the burlap and pull, drag it across the rough planks, wrestle it up the ladder, across the deck, down the gangplank, and onto the quay, where other men stack it into carts. Then you turn and go back down again. Another bale, and another. The hours begin to blur together. Your world shrinks to a narrow rhythm. Lift, carry, set down, return. The sun rises somewhere beyond the smoke-hazed sky. You can tell because the light shifts, growing brighter, warmer. Down in the hold, though, it's always the same dim half-light. By midday, your arms are trembling. Your back burns with a deep, steady pain. A blister is forming on your right hand where the hook rubs against your palm. You don't pay it much attention. Everyone here has blisters. They're just part of the work. One of the other labourers slumps against a stack of crates. A young man about your age. His name is James. Or John. Something like that. You've worked beside him before, but you've never really spoken. There isn't much talking down here, not when every breath is needed for lifting and hauling. He's pale now, sweating despite the chill. His hands shake slightly. "When did you eat last?" you ask. He has to think about it. Yesterday, maybe, or the day before. You reach into your pocket and pull out the bread you brought from home. Half a loaf. You'd been saving it for later, for when the hunger really started to bite. But this lad looks like he might faint, and if he faints, the stevedore might not hire him tomorrow. Might not hire anyone associated with him either. That's how it works. Weakness is treated like a disease. You hand him the bread. "Here," you say, "eat." He looks at you like you've handed him a bag of gold. It's only bread, stale bread at that. But down here, surrounded by millions of pounds worth of cargo that neither of you will ever own even a sliver of, that piece of bread could save his life. He eats, and the work goes on. You go back to work. This is Liverpool. This is survival. This is the early 1800s, and the sun is barely at its peak. Somewhere beyond the walls of the warehouses and the forest of masts, church bells begin to toll again. St. Nicholas. That familiar sound rolls across rooftops, through smoke and steam, over the chaos of the docks. A reminder that time is still passing. That the day is moving forward, even when it feels like you're trapped inside an endless loop of lifting and carrying and setting down. You think about that spire, the one sailors used as a landmark, the one they called Our Lady of St. Nicholas. It's been standing there since medieval times, watching over this stretch of water, watching ships come and go, watching Liverpool grow from a quiet fishing village into this sprawling, choking, unstoppable city. You wonder what that church thought of the slave ships that once sailed from these very docks. You wonder if anyone ever prayed for the people packed into those holds. Probably not. More likely they prayed for favourable winds, for safe crossings, for good returns. But that trade is over now, ended years ago. History, they say. The ships carry different cargo these days. Cotton instead of people, sugar instead of suffering, or at least a different kind of suffering, the kind where you work until your body breaks, rather than being worked as someone else's property. Progress, they call it. You tighten your grip on the cotton hook and climb back down into the darkness. The afternoon crawls by one bale at a time. Your shoulders have gone numb, which is almost a relief. Numbness means the pain has dulled into something distant. Your hands, though, haven't been so lucky. The blister on your right palm has burst, leaving raw skin that flares with every movement. You've torn a strip of cloth from the hem of your shirt and wrapped it around your hand. It helps a little. Not much. The young lad you gave bread to earlier is still working, still upright, still moving. He catches your eye across the hold and gives a small nod. That's all. No words, just recognition. In this place, that counts for a lot. It's about as close as people come to friendship. Slowly, almost without you noticing, the hold begins to empty. What was once a solid wall of cargo becomes a scattered collection of leftovers. The final bales, the last barrels, crates shoved into corners and forgotten until now. You can see the ribs of the ship at last, the curved wooden bones exposed where the cargo once pressed against them. At the bottom of the hold, bilge water sloshes back and forth, black, oily, sharp-smelling. You try to avoid stepping in it. You fail. One more trip, then another, and then finally, blessedly, the stevedore appears at the top of the ladder. "That's it, lads," he calls. "She's empty." You climb out of the hold for the last time. The air on deck hits you like a slap. Fresh might be too generous a word. It still smells like Liverpool, smoke and salt and sewage blended together. But after hours breathing the stale air below, it feels almost clean, almost light. The sun is already sinking. Has been for a while, apparently. You didn't notice it changing. Didn't see the light soften. Didn't notice the shadows stretching across the quayway. You've been working nearly 12 hours. Your body realizes it all at once. Every muscle, every joint, everything aches. There's a deep, overwhelming desire to lie down and never stand up again. But first there's payment. The stevedore has set up a small table near the warehouse. A ledger lies open in front of him. A metal cash box sits at his elbow. The workers line up, shuffling forward one by one. When it's your turn, he barely looks at you. He runs his finger down the page, finds your name and counts out the coins. 4 shillings, 6 pence, you. Take the money and step aside. 4 and 6 for 12 hours of back-breaking labour. Roughly 4 pence an hour. Less than what some merchants spend on a single glass of wine with their supper. But it's money, real money. Heavy coins in your pocket. Enough to keep a roof over your head for another week. Enough to buy food. Enough, if you're careful, to put a little aside for the days when there's no work at all. You count the coins twice, old habit, then you tuck them deep into your pocket, keeping your hand over them as you walk. Pickpockets work the docks. Everyone knows it, mostly kids. Fast fingers. You've seen wages disappear in seconds. You're not letting that happen today. The quay is quieter now. The frenzy of the day has faded. Ships settle in for the night. Crews are either ashore drinking or below deck sleeping. The cranes stand still. The carts have stopped their endless rumbling. Even the gulls seem tired, though a few still circle overhead, crying at nothing in particular. You start walking, not toward home, not yet. Your legs carry you along the waterfront, and you let them. After 12 hours in the dark, you need sky, need open space, need to feel the wind against your face, and remember that the world is bigger than ladders and bales and holds. The River Mersey stretches out beside you, grey water under a grey sky. At the horizon, though, there's a thin band of orange and pink as the sun slips away. Almost beautiful if you don't look too closely. If you ignore the floating rubbish, the smoke drifting low, the raw sewage outlet emptying into the river a short distance upstream. You pass warehouse after warehouse, massive brick buildings, 4 and 5 stories tall. Their windows are dark now, the workday finished. They loom quietly as you walk by, storing wealth you'll never touch, and slowly, as your steps carry you onward, the day begins to loosen its grip, giving way to evening. These buildings hold more wealth than you'll ever see in your lifetime. Cotton worth thousands of pounds, sugar, tobacco, rum. All of it stacked neatly behind locked doors, guarded through the night by watchmen carrying cudgels, sometimes accompanied by dogs. The wealth sleeps while you walk past it, aching and exhausted. Sometimes you wonder what it would be like to own just one barrel. Just one. A barrel of sugar, a bale of cotton, something you could sell, something that might change everything. But that's not how it works. The cargo belongs to the merchants own the ships employ the stevedores hire you, and at the very end of that chain, you earn 4 pence an hour moving someone else's wealth from one place to another. That's the system. That's how it's always been. You keep walking. The waterfront curves, and suddenly the scenery changes. The warehouses fall away, and something rises ahead of you that doesn't quite belong among wharves and grime. A building. No, more than a building. A palace. Liverpool Town Hall stands before you, as if it wandered in from another city entirely. A clean city, an elegant one. A place where people don't live in cellars, where children don't work in rope factories, where the average person lives past 17. It's enormous. Tall columns stretch across the front. Wide windows catch the last of the daylight. The stone is pale, almost white, instead of the soot-darkened grey that coats everything else in Liverpool. A dome crowns the roof, and atop the dome, a statue. You've walked past this building 100 times, maybe more. But tonight you slow down. Tonight you stand there with 4 shillings and 6 pence heavy in your pocket and actually look at it. Actually think about what it represents. This is where power lives, where merchants meet to discuss trade, where the council makes decisions about the city, where grand balls are held beneath crystal chandeliers, while people like your sister cough blood into handkerchiefs in damp cellars. Underground. The statue above watches it all. You've heard people say it's Minerva, or maybe Britannia, some goddess or another. She's holding something, a spear perhaps, or a shield. It's hard to tell from down here. From the street, she's just a dark shape against the fading sky, looking down on the docks, the warehouses, the courts and cellars, the entire sprawling, stinking, magnificent disaster of a city. Wonder what she thinks of us, you mutter quietly. A man passing by glances at you oddly. You ignore him. Someone once told you this building wasn't always here. One of the older dock workers, the kind who remembers things. There was a fire back in 1790-something. The whole place burned. It took years to rebuild. Cost a fortune. A fortune that came from the ships in the harbour, from the cargo in the warehouses, from the trade, all of it. Every carved column, every pane of glass, every tile on that domed roof. Paid for by the things that passed through this port, including the things that used to scream. You don't like to think about that, nobody does. It's history now, ancient history. The slave trade ended before you were born. But sometimes when you're hauling cotton up from a ship's hold, you wonder. You wonder if this is the same space where people were once packed in like cargo. If these are the same chains, reused to secure barrels instead of wrists. Probably not. Probably they use different ships now. Different equipment. Probably. A carriage rattles past, and you step back to avoid the splash of mud from its wheels. Through the window you glimpse the passengers. A man in a tall hat, a woman in silk, jewels at her throat catching the lamplight. They don't see you. People like that never do. You're part of the background, part of the machinery, one of the invisible hands that move their cargo and scrub their streets and vanish back into the cellars when the work is done. The carriage stops in front of the town hall. A footman jumps down and opens the door. The man steps out first, then turns to help the woman. They're laughing about something, some small joke, some world you'll never enter. They disappear through the grand doors, swallowed by a building you'll never set foot inside. You should go home. Your sister is waiting. Your legs feel close to giving out. There's nothing here for you except a glimpse of a life you'll never have. Still, you stand for another minute, watching the lamplighters move down the street, one flame at a time, watching the windows of the town hall glow as candles are lit inside, imagining the ballrooms, the chandeliers, the tables heavy with food. Your stomach growls, loud enough that you almost laugh. Right, time to go. You turn away from the town hall and head toward the maze of streets that will eventually lead you home. The evening crowd is different from the morning one. Fewer carts, fewer workers, more people drifting toward pubs, more laughter, more shouting. That particular restless energy that comes when the working day ends and the drinking begins. Liverpool has a lot of pubs. Someone once told you that if you lined them all up end to end, they'd stretch for 11 or 12 miles. You don't know if that's true. You've never tried to count. But it sounds right. On every street, every corner, there's somewhere to buy beer or gin or rum, somewhere to spend the wages you just earned, somewhere to forget for a few hours that you'll have to do it all again tomorrow. You're tempted, your throat is dry, your muscles ache. A drink would take the edge off, would make the walk home feel shorter, would give your hands something to do besides guarding the coins in your pocket. But no, not tonight. Tonight, every penny matters. You keep walking. The streets grow narrower the farther you move away from the waterfront. Each turn seems to squeeze the space a little more, as if the city itself is slowly closing in. The buildings rise higher here, stacked close together, their upper floors blocking out what little light remains. The glow from the docks fades behind you. The air feels heavier. The light dims, fading into long stretches of shadow, broken only by the occasional gas lamp. There are a few of them, scattered here and there, flickering weakly. Not enough to truly light the way. Never enough. Shadows cling to doorways and stretch deep into alley mouths. They linger, unmoving, until suddenly they don't. Shapes shift in the darkness, subtle and quiet. Some of them are people, moving softly, trying not to be noticed. Some of them are probably rats, quick and low to the ground, darting between refuse and broken stone. It's hard to tell which is which. You pick up your pace without thinking, just a little faster, enough to keep moving. This part of town is mostly Irish. Wave after wave of them cross the sea. To get here, escaping things left behind at home. Hunger, famine, poverty. Things you've heard about but don't fully understand, because you've never been to Ireland and likely never will. They arrive in Liverpool believing it will be better. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. The city doesn't promise anything, it simply takes who it can. You hear Irish accents everywhere as you walk, in the shouts of children playing in the gutters, splashing through dirty water and broken stones, in the arguments spilling out of tenement windows, voices raised more from exhaustion than anger, in the songs drifting from the open doors of pubs, low and tired, carried by stale air and cheap ale. Sad songs, most of them. songs about fields and villages and places they'll never see again. There are Welsh voices here too, Scots, people from every county in England, all drawn by the same hope of work. Liverpool is a city of strangers, a city where almost everyone comes from somewhere else, a city that swallows people whole, works them hard and spits them back out again, changed, thinner, quieter. The city doesn't care much about what happens in between. You pass a group of children huddled together in a doorway. 5 of them, maybe 6. It's hard to count in the dim light. The youngest can't be more than 5 or 6 years old. They aren't playing, they aren't talking. They're just sitting there, pressed close to one another, watching the street, waiting. One of them looks up and meets your eyes, a boy. Thin face, sharp eyes. Eyes that seem too old for his small body, the kind of eyes that have already seen more than they should. You know what he's doing, what all of them are doing. They're working, just not the kind of work that shows up in ledgers or earns wages at the end of the day. They're watching for marks, for victims, for anyone foolish enough to walk through these streets with money in their pocket and their guard down. You keep one hand close to your coins as you walk past. And don't slow down. The boy doesn't follow you. Maybe you look too poor to bother with. Maybe you look too alert. Maybe he's waiting for someone else. Someone better. Someone easier. Whatever the reason, you're grateful. You don't look back. A few more streets, a few more turns. The building's pressing closer until you feel like you could touch both walls at once if you stretched out your arms. The smell gets worse with every step. Rot, waste, damp stone. The sounds grow louder too. Babies crying somewhere above or below. Dogs barking in tight courtyards. Somewhere, someone smashes something made of glass. The sharp sound echoing briefly before fading away. Home, or what passes for it. You duck through a narrow passage into the courtyard. The pump is still there, worn smooth from years of use. The privy is still there too, reeking as always. Nothing changes much here. The trapdoor leading down to your cellar sits where you left it. You lift it open and begin the careful descent into darkness. Inside, your sister is awake. She's sitting up against the wall, wrapped in a blanket that's more holes than fabric. The older man, George or whatever his name is snoring softly in his corner. The woman with the baby is nursing, or trying to. The baby isn't crying right now. A small mercy. You made it back, your sister says. Her voice is thin, and the cough beneath it is worse than before. You can hear it in every word. Made it back. You sit beside her and pull out your wages. In the darkness you can barely see the coins, so you count them by feel. 4 shillings and 6pence. All still there. Good day, she says. You nod. Good enough. You hand her one of the shillings, for food tomorrow, for whatever medicine she might find, for whatever might help. She takes it without arguing. That's how you know how bad she feels. Normally she would refuse. Normally she would insist she's fine and tell you to save your money. Tonight she just closes her fingers around the coin and says, "Thank you." You lean back against the damp stone wall and close your eyes. 12 hours hauling cotton. 4 shillings and 6pence earned. 1 shilling gone. That leaves 3 and 6. Enough for rent, enough to eat, enough to survive another week, if the work holds out, if the ships keep coming, if your body lasts longer than your luck. Above you, through 8 feet of earth and stone, Liverpool settles into the night. You hear the last carts rumbling home, drunks singing their way between pubs. The bells of St. Nicholas Church toll the hour. You count them slowly. 9, 10, 10 o'clock. Late, but not too late. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. Wake at 6, walk to the docks, hope to be chosen, haul cargo until your arms ache, collect your wages, walk home, sleep, repeat. This is your life. This is what survival looks like in Liverpool in the early 1800s. For now, though, you're done. The day is over. Your sister is beside you. There's money in your pocket. And somewhere above the smoke and the clouds there might even be stars. You wouldn't know. You've never seen them from down here. Sleep comes slowly. It always does in this damp darkness. But eventually it comes. And for a few hours you're somewhere else. Somewhere the air is clean. Somewhere beds are soft. Somewhere no one has to work themselves to exhaustion just to earn enough for bread. Maybe such a place exists. Maybe someday you'll see it. For now there's only Liverpool. Only the cellar. Only the endless, grinding, beautiful, terrible effort of surviving. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. 3 days later, the ships stop coming. It happens sometimes. Bad weather in the Irish Sea, delays at American ports, paperwork tangled in offices far away. Whatever the reason, the result is always the same. No ships, no work, no wages. You go to the dock gates every morning. You stand in the crowd with the other men. You wait. You watch the stevedores shake their heads and turn away. And slowly, quietly, the crowd begins to thin. Nothing today, lads. Try again tomorrow. Tomorrow comes. And it's the same story, the same words, the same shaking heads at the dock gates. No ships, no cargo, no work. So now you're walking through Liverpool with nothing to do and nowhere to be. On the surface, that sounds like a kind of freedom, time with no demands, hours to fill as you please. But you know better. You know what it really means. Every day without work is a day without pay. Every day without pay brings you closer to missing the rent. And every day closer to missing the rent is a step closer to the street. The margin is thin, always has been. Thinner now than ever. And your sister is getting worse. The cough has changed. It's deeper than before. It comes from somewhere low in her chest now, thick and wet, rattling when she breathes. It wakes you in the night. It follows you into your dreams. She's been spitting blood into a rag she keeps folded near her side. She thinks you haven't noticed. You have. You just don't know what to do about it. The shilling you gave her bought some medicine from a woman down the street. Some kind of tonic. It smelled sharp and bitter, heavy with alcohol. Might have been herbs, might have been nothing at all. Might have been poison, for all you know. It didn't help. Nothing helps. But she needs to eat, and so do you, and that means going to market. St. John's Market is about a 15-minute walk from your cellar, through courts and alleys and streets you know so well you could find your way blind. Past the dead horse that's finally been cleared away, leaving behind only a dark stain on the cobblestones. Past the gin shop, where a woman is already drunk at 10 in the morning, leaning against the doorframe, singing something slow and sad to no one in particular. You pass children along the way. Some are definitely pickpockets. Some are probably pickpockets. Some are just children. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. You keep your hand on your coins. 2 shillings and 3 pence. That's all you have left. All that stands between you and nothing. The market announces itself before you ever see it. First comes the noise. A low roar that grows louder with every step. Hundreds of voices layered together, shouting, calling, bargaining. Vendors cry out their wares. Customers argue over prices. Children scream. Dogs bark. Somewhere, someone is playing a fiddle, though it's almost impossible to hear it over everything else. Then comes the smell. Fish hits you first. Raw fish. Old fish. Fish that's been sitting out since dawn and is starting to think about what comes next. It mixes with the smell of meat, blood and sawdust. Something grey and unidentifiable that might be rabbit, or might be cat. It's hard to tell, and nobody asks too many questions at St. John's Market. Underneath that are the vegetables, cabbage, onions, potatoes, some fresh, some less so. All of them contributing their own notes to the heavy air, crushed produce ground into the stone floor by countless feet, spilled liquids, rotting scraps. And over it all, the smell of people, unwashed, sweating, packed shoulder to shoulder, the same smell you know from your cellar, multiplied by hundreds. Welcome to St. John's Market, the place where Liverpool feeds itself. You step inside and are immediately swallowed by the crush. The building is enormous, a vast iron-roofed hall stretching out in every direction. Cast iron columns rise up like metal tree trunks, holding the weight of the roof above. Light filters down through glass panels overhead, pale and diffused, illuminating the chaos below. Stalls and tables are crammed together with barely enough space to pass between them. Every inch is used, every surface covered with something for sale. This is modern engineering, they say. The iron frame, the glass roof, all designed to bring order to the old street markets, to provide shelter, to improve hygiene. The hygiene part still needs some work. The floor is slick with something you'd rather not identify. Your boots squelch softly with each step. A woman pushes past you carrying a basket of eels that are still wriggling. A man is butchering a pig right there in the aisle, blood running into the cracks between the stones. 2 children are fighting over what looks like a dropped turnip. You move through it all slowly, head down, hand on your money, eyes open, looking for bargains, watching for trouble. The fish section is the worst, or maybe the best, depending on how you look at it. Fish is cheap here, really cheap. Herring at half a penny apiece, fish heads for almost nothing. They make a decent soup if you know what you're doing. The problem is the smell, and the flies, and the quiet suspicion that some of this fish has been here long enough to apply for citizenship. But protein is protein. You can't afford to be choosy. How much for the herrings, you ask? The woman behind the stall looks you up and down. Her face is leathery, her hands are thick and scarred, hands that have gutted more fish than you can imagine. "Penny for two," she says. You shake your head. A penny each. 2 for a penny is robbery. A girl pushing a handcart nearly clips your knees. You step aside without breaking eye contact. 3 for a penny, the woman says finally. Better. You hand over the coin. She wraps 3 small herrings in a piece of paper already soaked through with old fish oil. The smell is going to follow you all day. But there will be dinner tonight. That matters more. You move on past the cheese sellers, their wheels of hard yellow cheese far beyond your reach. Past the bread stalls, tempting but not necessary since there's a bakery closer to home that's cheaper. Past the meat section where butchers shout about beef and pork and things that are probably beef or pork, but might also be horse. Horse meat is illegal to sell. Everyone knows that. Everyone also knows that not all of these butchers are especially concerned with regulations. If it's cheap enough, people don't ask questions. And if you're hungry enough, neither do you. Hunger has a way of making you flexible about these things. Rules blur when your stomach has been empty for too long. Principles soften when the choice is between pride and eating. You stop at a vegetable stand. Potatoes, onions, cabbage. The holy trinity of poor people's cooking. Simple, cheap, filling. A few potatoes and an onion, cooked down slowly with those herrings, will make something that's almost a meal. Almost enough. The vendor is a young man about your age. His eyes are tired. His fingernails are black with dirt that never quite washes out. He looks like he's been standing here since before dawn and would rather be anywhere else in the world. 4 potatoes and an onion, you say. He weighs them on a battered scale, nudging the weights with practiced fingers. 3 pence, he says. You hand over the coins. Your stash is shrinking. 1 shilling and 11 pence left. A week ago you felt almost comfortable. Not rich, never that. But steady. Now you're counting every halfpenny like it might be your last. The vegetables go into your pockets alongside the fish. You must look ridiculous, lumpy and uneven, smelling strongly of the day's catch. But you don't have a basket. Baskets cost money. Money you don't have. You're turning to leave when something catches your eye. A disturbance near the entrance. Raised voices. A knot of people gathering around something you can't see. You should ignore it. It's none of your business. Getting involved in other people's problems is a reliable way to create problems of your own. You know this. You've lived it. But curiosity has always been stronger than caution. It always wins in the end. You edge closer, pushing through the crowd until you can see what's happening. A man has a boy by the collar. The man's face is red with anger, his grip tight, shaking the boy like a rag doll. The boy looks about 10 or 11. Thin. Quick-eyed. Familiar. You recognize him at once. It's the child from the doorway. The one who watched you pass the other night with those sharp, 2 old eyes. Caught him with his hand in me pocket, the man is shouting. Little thief. Someone's called the watchman. The boy doesn't fight back. He doesn't cry. He doesn't plead. He just stares straight ahead, blank and still, like someone who knows exactly what's coming and has already accepted it. This is what happens to pickpockets when they're caught. Sometimes it's a beating. Sometimes it's the watchman, then the courts, then prison or transportation. A boy that age could be sent to Australia. Technically, he could even be hanged, though they don't usually hang children for petty theft anymore. The crowd thickens, people like a spectacle. Even here, surrounded by fish guts and rotting vegetables, they'll stop to watch someone else's misery. It makes their own lives feel lighter by comparison. Maybe someone should do something, a woman mutters, though she doesn't step forward herself. The man shakes the boy again. Where's me money? What did you do with it? The boy says nothing. His silence only seems to fuel the man's anger. You should walk away. This isn't your problem. That boy would have robbed you if he'd had the chance. He's a thief, a criminal. Whatever happens to him, he brought it on himself. But he's also a child, a hungry, desperate child doing what hungry, desperate children do. And you remember what it was like before the dock work, before you were big enough to lift cotton bales, before anyone would hire you for anything at all. You remember the streets, the hunger, the things you did back then, the things you don't like to think about anymore. Before you can talk yourself out of it, you step forward. Hold on, you say. Just hold on a minute. The words are out before you can stop them. The man turns to face you. What's it to you? He snaps. You don't have a good answer, so you invent one. He's my brother's. Boy, you say. My nephew. I know him. He's not right in the head. Doesn't always know what he's doing. The lie comes easily, too easily. The man's grip loosens just a fraction. Your nephew? He says, doubtful. That's right. I'll make it good. Whatever he took, I'll pay for it. You know this is foolish. You know it's dangerous. You know it's going to cost you money you can't afford to lose. But the boy is looking at you now. Those sharp eyes no longer hard, just uncertain, confused. No one has ever stepped in for him before. That much is clear. The man hesitates. He's still angry, but he's also practical. He took 2 shillings, he says. It's a lie. You know it instantly. No one carrying 2 shillings walks around dressed like that. Not here. Not in this market. You'd bet your life the real amount was 6pence or less. He took 6pence, you say. Maybe 8. That's what kids like this usually go for. Small amounts. Anything more and they can't run fast enough. The man's face tells you you've guessed correctly. He grunts. Fine, 8pence. And you keep him away from this market. Next time I'll break his fingers myself. You hand over 8pence. 8pence you desperately needed. 8pence, that means meals. Safety. Survival. The man releases the boy and vanishes into the crowd, muttering about thieves and vermin and the decay of society. The noise of the market swallows him whole. The boy stands there, staring at you. Why'd you do that? He asks. It's a fair question. You don't really have an answer. 'Cause I'm an idiot, you say. Now go, before someone else catches you. He doesn't move. Those eyes study you, weighing you, searching for your angle. Everyone has one. That's what his look says. Nobody does anything for nothing. I don't want anything from you, you say. Just go, and maybe try not to get caught next time. Something shifts in his expression. The weariness doesn't vanish, but it settles into something else. Something quieter, almost like respect. He reaches into his shirt and pulls out a coin. He holds it out to you. A shilling. What's this? You ask. What I actually took, he says. That man was lying about the 8pence. I lifted a shilling off him before he noticed. You stare at the coin, then at the boy, then back at the coin. He's giving you money. This child pickpocket is handing you money, more than you just paid to save him. Consider it even, he says quietly. And then he's gone, slipping back into the crowd as easily as smoke, disappearing so completely it's almost as if he was never there at all. You stand in the middle of St. John's Market holding a shilling a 10-year-old thief just pressed into your hand. Around you, the noise continues. Fish sellers calling out prices, vegetables being weighed, people arguing, bargaining, surviving. This city, this mad, impossible, beautiful, terrible city. You pocket the shilling and start the walk home. The fish is already starting to smell worse, if that's even possible. The potatoes knock against your hip with every step, bruising slowly. The onion presses into your side. You must look absurd. And yet you're smiling. You can't stop yourself. In a world that feels built to grind people down, sometimes strange things happen. Sometimes a pickpocket pays you back. Your sister is asleep when you return, or pretending to be asleep. The difference doesn't matter much. The seller is quiet except for her breathing, that wet, rattling sound that frightens you more with each passing day. You set the food down and begin preparing dinner. There's a small fire pit in the corner. Not strictly allowed, but everyone has one. Everyone pretends not to notice. You build a small fire with scraps of wood and dried leaves, just enough heat to cook the fish. Smoke curls upward through the cracks around the trapdoor. Nobody complains. Nobody ever does. By now the whole court probably smells like smoked herring. The fish sizzles quietly. The potatoes go into a pot of water you hauled from the pump earlier. The onion gets chopped and dropped in as well. It isn't much. Barely anything, really. But it's food. It's dinner. It's proof that you made it through another day. Your sister wakes to the smell of cooking. "You're back," she says. Her voice is weaker than it was this morning, thinner. "I'm back," you tell her. "Got some fish, potatoes, you need to eat." She doesn't argue. That frightens you more than anything else. You divide the food onto 2 chipped plates. You don't remember where they came from. Found, borrowed, salvaged. The portions are small, but they're even. She tries to slide some of hers onto your plate. You refuse. She needs it more. She doesn't fight you on it. Somewhere above, church bells ring out. Not St. Nicholas this time. A different church. There are so many in Liverpool. They multiply endlessly. Every denomination, every faction, all promising salvation while people die in cellars 8 feet underground. You eat in silence. The fish is better than expected. Fresh enough. The potatoes are filling. The onion adds something that almost counts as flavor. For a few minutes, everything feels almost okay. Almost peaceful. Just the 2 of you sharing a meal, pretending tomorrow isn't coming. But tomorrow is always coming. That's the trouble with tomorrows. They never stop. When you're finished, you clean the plates and bank the fire so it won't burn through the night. Your sister has fallen asleep again. Real sleep this time. You can tell by the way her breathing has slowed. Still that awful rattle, but deeper now. Slower. You lie down beside her and stare up into the darkness where the ceiling should be. 1 shilling and 14 pence left, plus the shilling from the boy. 2 shillings and 14 pence in total. Enough for maybe another week, if the work comes back, if the ships return, if nothing else goes wrong in Liverpool. Something always goes wrong, but that's tomorrow's worry. For now, you close your eyes. The sounds of the city fade. The smell of fish and smoke and underground damp fades. Everything softens, slipping into that quiet space between waking and sleep. Somewhere out there, in the maze of streets and courts and alleys, a 10-year-old pickpocket is probably lifting another purse. You hope he doesn't get caught. Sunday morning comes quietly. No work today, even if there were ships. The Sabbath is the one day Liverpool pretends to be respectable. The docks fall silent. Warehouses remain locked. The great machinery of commerce pauses for a few hours so people can wash their faces, put on cleaner clothes, and pretend they aren't the same ones cursing and shoveling manure the rest of the week. Your best clothes are the same as your worst. A shirt with fewer holes. Trousers held up with rope. Still, you wash your face. Use the last of the pump water to scrub away the worst of the dock grime. You almost look presentable. Your sister wanted to come, she insisted, in that stubborn way of hers. But the coughing fit that took her this morning ended the discussion. She's staying in the cellar, resting, trying to breathe without sounding like she's drowning. You tell her you'll pray for her. She laughs, a wet laugh that turns into another cough. "Pray for yourself," she says. "God's not listening to either of us. Maybe she's right. But you go anyway. Not because you believe exactly, but because on Sundays the churches open their doors. And for a few hours, you can sit somewhere that isn't underground. Somewhere with light and air and space. Somewhere that smells like candle wax instead of sewage. St. Nicholas is closest. The sailors' church. The bells that have marked the hours of your life for as long as you can remember. You've never been inside. The walk takes you through streets that feel strangely quiet. Shops closed, pubs closed, at least officially, though everyone knows where a man can get a drink if he knows who to ask. Children play in the gutters, fewer than usual, dressed a little. Nicer, hair combed, their mothers having worked at them with spit and determination, trying to make them look like proper Christian children, at least for a few hours. The church appears ahead of you, rising up from the waterfront as if it has grown there naturally, as if stone and river and city have always belonged together. It feels permanent in a place where very little ever is, as much a part of Liverpool as the docks themselves, and in truth, it is. The church has stood here since medieval times, watching over this stretch of river while Liverpool changed shape again and again, from a fishing village to a market town, and then into whatever it has become now. This sprawling, crowded, foul-smelling, magnificent monster of a city. The spire is the first thing you notice, tall, slender, elegant. It points straight up into the sky like a finger accusing heaven of something it refuses to explain. That spire has guided sailors home for generations. You've heard the stories from the old men at the docks. Men who spent weeks at sea, months sometimes, out on the Irish Sea, battered by weather and loneliness. And then one day, on the horizon, they'd see the spire. They'd know they'd made it back, know they'd survived, know that Liverpool was waiting for them, with all its filth and noise and solid ground. But the spire you're looking at isn't the original. An old man told you that once. A night watchman at the docks, filling time during a quiet shift. The spire you see now was built to replace the one that fell. 1810, he'd said. February. A Sunday morning just like this one. The bells were ringing. Families were gathering for service. Children from the charity school were filing into the church. Poor children, the ones whose education came from the church's generosity, lined up neatly in their best clothes. And then, without warning, the spire came down. One moment it stood there, solid, unchanged for 60 years. The next moment it was falling, crashing through the roof, stone and timber and slate raining down onto the people below. 25 dead. That's what the old man said. 25 lives ended in an instant. Most of them children. You think about that as you approach the church doors. Think about those families, walking in on a peaceful Sunday morning, just like you are now. Think about parents losing children, children losing parents, the suddenness of it. One moment you're praying, the next moment the sky is literally falling. They rebuilt, of course. Liverpool always rebuilds. The spire went back up, taller, stronger. The roof was repaired, the pews replaced. Within a few years, most people probably couldn't tell anything had happened at all, unless they knew where to look. You push open the doors and step inside. The smell hits you first. Candle wax, incense, something faintly floral, probably from arrangements near the altar. It's so different from the world outside that you pause, just standing there, breathing it in. Clean air, warm air, air that hasn't passed through drains and cellars and narrow courts. The space is larger than you expected. A high ceiling stretches overhead. Tall windows let in the dull grey Liverpool light. Wooden pews run in orderly rows toward the altar, already filling with worshippers. Working people mostly. Dockhands, sailors, women with tired faces. You notice a few finer coats closer to the front. Merchants, perhaps. Men who choose to worship here instead of one of the grander churches farther inland. You find a seat near the back, slide onto the hard wooden bench. You try to make yourself small, unremarkable, just another poor soul looking for a little quiet. The service begins. The vicar's voice rises and falls in that familiar church rhythm. Calm, steady, almost hypnotic. You don't really listen to the words. They wash over you like the sound of the sea, comforting, even when the meaning doesn't quite sink in. Instead, you look around. The walls are covered with plaques and memorial tablets, names, dates, short inscriptions remembering the dead. Some clearly belong to wealthy people, ship owners, merchants, men of status. Their tablets are large and ornate, carved with angels and anchors and symbols of maritime success. Others are simpler, small brass plates with names you don't recognize. Sailors, most likely. Men who died at sea and never came home, their bodies resting somewhere at the bottom of the Atlantic, but their names at least making it back to Liverpool. And then there are the ones from 1810. You see them near the side entrance, a cluster of tablets grouped together, smaller than the merchant memorials, less elaborate. But there are so many of them, name after name. The children. Mary, aged 9. William, aged 7. Elizabeth, aged 11. The names begin to blur together, a whole generation of Liverpool's poor gone in a single moment. All because a spire that had stood for 60 years decided that this Sunday, this particular Sunday, was the day it would fall. You wonder if anyone saw it coming, if there were cracks in the stone. Subtle warnings ignored because the spire had always been there, because it felt permanent, or if it really was that sudden, that random, that cruel. Life in Liverpool teaches you that nothing is as solid as it seems, that everything can change in an instant, that the ground beneath your feet can give way without warning. Still, children in church on a Sunday morning, that feels like a particular kind of cruelty, the sort that makes you wonder if Your sister is right about God not listening. Eventually the service ends. People begin to stand. They file out slowly, nodding to neighbors, murmuring quiet greetings. You stay seated a little longer, still looking at the tablets. A voice breaks into your thoughts. Lost someone, did you? You turn. An old man has settled onto the pew beside you. He looks ancient. His face is deeply lined like a cliff battered by weather. His hands are knotted and spotted with age. But his eyes are sharp, bright. The eyes of someone who has seen a great deal and is still paying attention. No, you say, just looking. He nods, follows your gaze to the memorials on the wall. 1810, he says quietly. I remember it. You look at him more closely. He would have to be very old to remember something from over 20 years ago, but he does look old enough that maybe he really was there. I was a boy, he continues, not much older than those children, would have been in that church myself, except I was sick that morning. My mother kept me home. He says it flatly, no drama, just a fact. Sometimes I think about that, he says again, all those years I've had, all the voyages, all the places I've seen, and I only got them because I had a fever that Sunday morning. You don't know what to say. So naturally you don't say anything. The old man shifts on the bench. His joints crack audibly. A soft echoing pop here, a low groan there, like old wood settling. You work the docks, he says. It's not a question. How do you know? You manage to ask. Your hands, the way you sit, he says. I worked ships for 40 years. I can spot a dockman from a mile away. He lifts his own hands, scarred, calloused. One finger on his left hand is missing its tip. Winch accident, he says, noticing your look. 1823. Got off lucky. Could have lost the whole hand. You think of the older dock worker at the gates, the one missing 3 fingers. Everyone has a story like that. Everyone who works the waterfront long enough. What ships did you sail on? You ask. The old man is quiet for a long moment. Something shifts in his face. A shadow passes behind bright, clear eyes. All kinds, he says finally. Merchantmen, traders, some of the fast packet ships carrying mail to America. He pauses, glancing downward. And before that, before the trade ended, some of the other ships too. You know what he means. Everyone in Liverpool knows. The triangular trade. Liverpool to Africa, Africa to the Americas, America back to Liverpool. The circuit of commerce that built this city. The circuit that carried human cargo. You don't know what to say. What do you say to someone who was part of that? Someone who helped transport people in chains across an ocean? Someone who now sits quietly in a church, old and weathered, waiting to die like everyone else? The old man seems to read your thoughts. I was young, he says. Didn't think about what we were doing, didn't want to think about it. The pay was good, the work was work. You loaded cargo, you sailed, you unloaded. You didn't ask questions about what the cargo was. He looks down at his hands again, resting them in his lap. But you hear the years in his voice, hear the knowledge weighing on him. You hear things over the years, he continues. You hear what happened to those people after they left your ship. You meet men who worked the plantations. You read the pamphlets the abolitionists hand out, and slowly you start to understand what you were part of. His voice softens, almost a whisper. I've been coming to this church for 20 years now, every Sunday, praying for something I can't name. Forgiveness maybe, except I don't think there's enough forgiveness in the world for what we did. The church is nearly empty now, just you and the old man, and the memorial tablets on the walls. The candles flicker low, shadows stretching across the stone floors. The grey light through the windows seems dimmer than it was before. Why are you telling me this, you ask? He shrugs, a tired, ancient movement. Because you're young, because you work the docks, because I see myself in you 40 years ago. Before I knew what I know now, he turns, fixing you with those sharp, piercing eyes. This city, he says, this whole city, every building, every street, every stone, it's all built on blood. He gestures toward the town hall, the grand houses, the warehouses filled with cotton, all of it paid for by suffering, by people bought and sold like cattle, by children who died in chains before they ever saw land again. He gestures toward the altar. Even this church, You think the merchants donated money out of Christian charity? No, they donated to ease their consciences, to buy their way into heaven, to pretend they weren't monsters. His hand falls back into his lap. The trade ended 20 years ago, but the money didn't end. The money never ends. It just changes shape, becomes buildings, becomes power, becomes the city we live in now. You sit with that. For a long moment, the weight of it. The knowledge that the ground you walk on, the air you breathe, the streets you navigate, all of it has this history, this darkness, this blood. I didn't know, you say, which is a foolish thing to admit, because everyone knows, but knowing and understanding are very different things. Nobody knows, the old man says quietly. Not really. That's how we live with it. Don't look too close. Don't ask too many questions. Don't think about what's buried beneath our feet. He struggles to his feet, knees popping like damp firewood. I've taken enough of your Sunday, he says. You've got a life to get back to, a sister to take care of, if I heard right. You don't remember mentioning your sister, but old men hear things. Liverpool is small in some ways. Everyone's business is everyone's business. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a coin, pressing it into your hand. It's a shilling for the girl, he says. Get her some decent medicine. Not that rubbish they sell in the market. You try to give it back. He refuses. Consider it an old man's penance, he says. 1 shilling out of a lifetime of wages earned the wrong way. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it's something. And then he's gone, shuffling down the aisle, out the door, into the grey Liverpool morning. You sit there a long time after, holding the shilling, looking at the memorial tablets, thinking about the children who died when the spire fell, thinking about the children who died on ships crossing the Atlantic, thinking about your sister coughing in a cellar that was probably built with slave money. The candles gutter and die, the church grows darker, and still you sit, letting the silence wrap around you, carrying you towards sleep. Eventually someone comes by to tell you that the church is closing, that the doors will be locked, and you must leave. Slowly, almost reluctantly, you step out into the street. The waterfront stretches before you, quiet and still on this Sunday afternoon. The ships are at anchor, their masts swaying gently in the breeze. The warehouses are shuttered, doors tightly locked, everything lying in wait for Monday, when the machinery of commerce will begin to grind again, when the city will erupt into noise and motion once more. You pause for a moment looking at St. Nicholas, at the spire that fell and was rebuilt, at the church that has watched over this harbour for centuries, that has blessed ships setting sail and welcomed them home, that has christened children and buried them, that has listened to confessions from sailors, merchants, dock workers, and everyone who has passed through this city. The bells begin to toll, not calling people to service this time, only marking the hour. The same sound you've heard every day of your life. But today, somehow, it sounds different, heavier, as if the bells themselves are carrying something you didn't know was there before. Some weight, some memory embedded in the sound. You pocket the shilling and start walking home. 3 shillings and 14 pence now, the old man's coin, added to what you had before. Enough for medicine, enough for food, enough to survive a little longer. Your sister will ask where you got it. You aren't sure what you'll say. The truth feels too heavy, too complicated. How do you explain that an old slave ship sailor sitting in a quiet church handed you a shilling out of guilt that has been festering for 40 years? Perhaps you'll tell her you found it. Perhaps you'll say you earned it somehow. A small lie to protect her from a larger truth. That's how Liverpool works. That's how everyone here survives. Small lies to make it through the day, bigger lies to rest at night. And underneath it all, the truth no one wants to face. The blood in the stones, the ghosts in the harbour, the weight of history pressing down on every person who calls this city home. You walk home slowly, through streets that seem suddenly different, older, darker, rich with stories you never thought to ask about. The sellers are waiting. Your sister is waiting. Tomorrow is waiting. But for now you just walk, one foot in front of the other, through a city that has, for just a moment, revealed the bones it was built on. You wonder if you'll ever see it the same way again. The ships came back on Tuesday. You heard them before you saw them. The shouting from the docks carried over the rooftops like a wave. Ships in! Ships in! Work today! The words travelled through the air, bouncing off brick walls and chimneys, stirring every man who had been turned away for days. You were out the door before your sister could say goodbye, rushing down the passage through the court and into the streets, almost running, even as your body protested every step. Your mind focused on one thing only: work. The crowd at the dock gates was larger than usual. All those men turned away before, all those empty pockets and hungry bellies pressed forward at once. You fought your way toward the front, elbows and shoulders and muttered curses mixing in the early morning air. Someone stepped on your foot, you stepped on someone else's. Nobody apologized. Nobody expected apologies. The stevedore climbed up on his crate, same red face, same big belly, the same expression of a man choosing livestock. His finger swept across the crowd. You. There. He pointed at you. 3 days of nothing, and now this. Work, wages, survival for another week. You didn't smile, didn't celebrate. You just stepped forward and followed the others toward the ships, toward the endless rhythm of lifting and carrying. That was 12 hours ago. Now you are walking home again, 4 shillings and 6 pence in your pocket, same as before. Your arms are screaming. Your back is a solid mass of pain. The blister on your hand has reopened, blood mixing with dirt on your palm. And yet, somehow, you are smiling. Money means medicine. Medicine might help your sister, might not, but might is better than nothing. Your route home takes you through parts of Liverpool you don't usually see. Too tired to take the direct path through the worst of the courts and alleys, you wander, taking the longer route, the way that leads past buildings that are actual buildings, not just tenements stacked on top of each other like a puzzle pressed together. That's how you end up on this particular street. You aren't even sure what street it is. Somewhere north of the docks. Somewhere that was probably countryside a few decades ago, before Liverpool swallowed it whole. The buildings here are different, newer, purpose-built, as they say. Not old houses carved into a dozen cramped dwellings. And then you see it, a building with a windmill next to it. Windmills aren't unusual in Liverpool. There used to be dozens. 74 at the last count, someone told you once, grinding grain for bread, pumping water, doing the work wind could do, before steam began to take over. But this windmill is right next to a building that makes you stop. Not grand like the town hall or the merchants' houses, but clean, well kept. A sign hangs above the door, though you are too far away to read it. And there are people coming and going, young people, children maybe, or not quite children. Young men and women moving with a careful, deliberate rhythm. One of them bumps into a post, softly, adjusts their path, keeps walking. No embarrassment, no surprise. You realize then they cannot see. These are blind people. A place for blind people. You've seen blind beggars on the streets, men and women sitting in doorways with cups out asking for pennies. Some faking it, probably, some genuinely unable to see. Casualties of accidents, illness, or simple bad luck. But you've never seen anything like this. A building dedicated to them. You stand for a long moment, watching, letting the quiet motion of this strange place settle over you. The sun is lowering, the air cools, the city hums softly in the distance. And you continue walking, one slow, tired step at a time, your mind wandering as the evening wraps around Liverpool like a blanket, carrying you gently toward home, toward your sister, toward the small relief of rest. A place where they seem to be doing something other than begging. Curiosity pulls you closer. The sign above the door comes into focus as you approach. School for the indigent blind. Indigent, you know that word. Poor, desperately poor. A school for poor blind people. You stand there staring at the building, trying to make sense of it. Schools cost money. Schools are for children whose families can afford lessons in reading, writing, and arithmetic. Not for blind beggars. Not for people like the ones you see shuffling through the streets of Liverpool every day. Can I help you with something? A voice. You turn. A man stands in the doorway, middle-aged, well-dressed. Though not extravagantly, he has the look of someone who spends his days managing accounts and his nights worrying over figures. An administrator, keeper of ledgers. Sorry, you say. I was just looking. He studies you for a moment, taking in your dock worker's clothes, your calloused hands, the way exhaustion hangs over you like a cloak. "You're welcome to come inside," he says finally, "if you're curious. We don't turn people away. You should say no. You should go home. Your sister is waiting. The medicine won't buy itself." But your feet are already moving toward the door. Inside, the building smells of wood shavings and something else, something warm and faintly sweet, though you can't quite identify it. The administrator leads you down a corridor, past rooms where young people are at work. In one room, they weave baskets. Their fingers move with incredible speed and precision, threading strips of cane into shapes. They cannot see what they are doing. They do it by touch alone. In another room, they are making brushes, binding bristles to wooden handles. Again, impossible dexterity, confident, precise, practiced hands that move without sight. In a third room, there is music. A group of young people gather around instruments, violins, a piano, someone singing. The sound is beautiful, genuinely beautiful, not rough street music, but trained, practiced, refined. You stop in the doorway, listening, almost afraid to breathe. "That's what most people notice first," the administrator says beside you. "The music. It's what we're known for, I suppose." How do they... You start, then stop. The question feels awkward, almost rude. How do they learn? He answers for you. The same way anyone learns. Practice, repetition, good teaching. Being blind doesn't make you stupid. It just means you learn differently. He gestures for you to follow. "This place was founded 30 years ago," he continues, leading you toward a small courtyard. "The windmill is visible from here, sails turning slowly in the afternoon breeze. By a man named Edward Rushton. Have you heard of him?" You shake your head. "He was a poet," the administrator says. "A good one. Published several volumes. But that's not what he's remembered for. This place is." "Rushton went blind himself," the administrator explains. "When he was young, around 1820, he worked on ships out of Liverpool, a sailor like the old man in the church. You wonder if their paths ever crossed on those wooden decks. He sailed on slave ships," the administrator continues, "carrying people from Africa to the Americas. An outbreak of disease struck the hold, something with the eyes. It spread through the cargo hold like wildfire." The cargo hold. You know what that means? You do. "People in chains," he says quietly. "Human beings treated like cotton or sugar." Rushton went down into the hold. He tended the sick, tried to save as many as he could, and he caught the disease himself. 19 years old, and blind for life. The wind picks up. The windmill creaks as its sails turn. After that, the administrator says, Rushton became an abolitionist. He spent decades fighting the slave trade, writing poems, giving speeches. He made himself unpopular with the merchants who ran this city. Practically a pariah by the end. And yet, he smiles slightly. He took his blindness and turned it into something. He realized that blind people didn't have to be beggars. They didn't have to be helpless. They just needed someone to teach them, to give them skills. You look back at the building, at the young people learning to weave, to make brushes, to play music. Poor children, orphans, kids who would have spent their lives on the streets with cups in their hands, the administrator says. They leave here with trades, with skills, with ways to support themselves. What happens to them after, you ask? Some become professional musicians, he says. There's a concert circuit for blind performers. Others become craftsmen. The baskets and brushes they make here are sold. The money helps fund the school. It's not charity, it's investment. He turns to face you directly. Rushton believed everyone deserves dignity, even people the world has given up on, especially people the world has given up on. That's what this place is about. You stand in the courtyard, the windmill turning overhead, thinking about everything you've just heard. A man who went blind trying to save enslaved people from disease. A man who took that blindness and built something. A place where hopeless cases learn to be something other than hopeless. It's not the Liverpool you know. Not the Liverpool of cellars, cholera and children dying before they turn 5. It's something else. Something that shouldn't exist in a city this brutal, but does. And for a moment, the city feels just a little wider, a little lighter. A place where even in darkness, someone has found a way to make hope. You think about your sister, about the cough that won't go away, about what might happen if she doesn't get better. You think about all the ways people can be broken by disease, by poverty, by a spire falling on a Sunday morning, by a lifetime of hauling cargo for 4 shillings a day. And yet, somehow, people sometimes find ways to build things in the middle of all that brokenness. Schools, churches, windmills grinding grain so bread can be baked, so people can eat. It doesn't make the world less cruel, but it makes it something other than only cruel. I should go, you say. My sister is waiting. The administrator nods. Thank you for visiting. We're always glad when people take an interest. You turn to leave, then stop. The man who started this, Rushton, is he still alive? The administrator's face shifts, sadness in his eyes. He died years ago in 1814. Never saw the end of the slave trade he fought so hard against, though he lived just long enough to see it abolished in 1807. All those years of fighting, all those battles with merchants and politicians, probably wore him out. You nod, not sure what to say. But his school lives on, the administrator continues. That's something. Hundreds of young people have passed through these doors. Hundreds more will come. His name may be mostly forgotten, but the work he started continues. You step out into the Liverpool streets. Grey sky, cold smoke hanging in the air, horse manure squelching under your boots. But something feels different now. Lighter maybe, or heavier in a different way. You've spent your whole life in this city, walking these streets, working the docks, surviving day by day without thinking beyond the next meal, the next wage, the next breath. And now, in a few days, you've learned things you never knew. About the spire that fell, about the ships that carried people in chains, about a blind poet who built a school because he believed everyone deserves dignity. Liverpool is still Liverpool, cruel and beautiful, brutal and strange, built on blood, and somehow, impossibly, still capable of producing things like that school, that music, those young people learning to weave baskets in the dark. You walk home through the gathering evening. The medicine cellar is still open. A wizened woman tends jars filled with things you can't identify. You stop and buy something for your sister. Not the cheap stuff, something better, something that might actually help. It costs more than you wanted to spend, but the old sailor's shilling is still in your pocket. He said to use it for medicine, so you do. The cellar is dark when you get home. Your sister is awake, sitting up against the wall, wrapped in that ratty blanket. You brought medicine, she says, her voice thin and tired. I brought medicine, you answer, giving her the bottle. Watch her take a dose. Watch her face scrunch at the taste. Where'd you get the money, she asks. Long story, you say. She looks at you with those sharp eyes that see too much even in the darkness. You're different, she says. Something happened. You. Think about the school, about Rushton, about a man who went blind saving people he didn't have to save and spent the rest of his life building something that mattered. I learned some things, you say, about this city, about what's underneath it. Your sister coughs, that wet, rattling sound, but maybe slightly less wet than yesterday. Maybe the medicine is helping, or maybe you're just hoping. Tell me, she says. I'm not going anywhere, you answer. So you do. You sit next to her in the dark and tell her about the sailor in the church, about the spire that fell, about the blind school, the windmill, and a poet who lost his eyes trying to help enslaved people on a ship. She listens without interrupting. She has always been a good listener. When you finish, she is quiet for a long time. Then she says, That's the thing about Liverpool, isn't it? It's terrible, but it's not only terrible. Yeah, that's the thing. Somewhere outside, a church bell tolls. You don't count the rings this time. It doesn't matter what hour it is. What matters is that you're here. Your sister is here. There is medicine in her system and money in your pocket. Tomorrow the ships will probably need unloading again. And somewhere across the city, blind children are learning to make music. You close your eyes and let the darkness take you. Sleep comes easier tonight. Thursday brings something different. Not dock work. The ships are being unloaded by other men, and the stevedore doesn't pick you this time. Wrong place, wrong angle, bad luck. But a merchant on the waterfront needs someone to carry a package across the city, heavy, wrapped in oilcloth. He doesn't say what's inside and you don't ask. 6 pence for the delivery. Not as good as dock wages, but 6 pence is 6 pence. The address is on the other side of Liverpool, a part of the city you've never been to. The merchant scratches directions on a scrap of paper. Now you're walking with the package under your arm, trying to make sense of his handwriting. Bold Street. That's where you're supposed to go. Bold Street, near the top of a hill. Liverpool is built on hills. You forget that sometimes, living down by the water. Now your legs remind you that flat ground is a luxury. The streets are getting nicer as you go. Fewer piles of horse manure, fewer beggars in doorways, more glass in the windows, more paint on the doors. This is where the money lives. Not the old money, the aristocrats with their country estates, but the new money, the merchants, traders and ship owners who built fortunes on cotton, sugar, and everything else that flows through Liverpool's docks. You keep walking past shops selling things you'll never afford, past coffee houses where men in clean coats sit reading newspapers, past a woman in a dress that probably cost more than you'll earn in a year. She doesn't look at you. None of them do. You're carrying a package, which makes you a servant, which makes you invisible. Invisible is safe. Then you see it, the building on Bold Street. You stop on the pavement, staring up at it. It's not the biggest building you've ever seen. The town hall is bigger. Some of the warehouses on the waterfront are bigger. But there's something about this one. Maybe it's the columns, tall, white, and perfectly spaced. Maybe it's the dome rising behind them, catching the grey Liverpool light. Or maybe it's just the feeling of the place, the sense that something important happens here. A man brushes past, well-dressed, carrying a leather case under his arm. He climbs the steps and disappears inside. Another man follows, then another. Clean hands, easy confidence, walking into that building as if they belong. Excuse me. You turn. A boy, maybe 12 or 13, ragged clothes, sharp eyes, the kind you see on every street corner running errands for pennies. That's the Lysum, he says, noticing your stare. The what? The Lysum. Library for a gentleman. He pronounces it carefully as if he's practiced. A library. The word sits strange in your mouth. You know what a library is, roughly, a place with books. But you've never seen one. Books are expensive. Books are for people who can afford to sit around reading instead of working. Books are for another world, entirely. But here it is, a whole building full of them. You watch another man climb the steps. Older, grey-haired, expensive coat. Moves slowly like a man with nowhere urgent to be, like a man whose time belongs to himself. Must be nice. What kind of library? You ask, knowing it's a stupid question. The biggest in England, the boy says. That's what they say. 10,000 books, all lined up on the walls. Newspapers from London, from Ireland, from everywhere. The gentlemen pay money every year to use it. They go in there, read, drink coffee, talk about philosophy. Philosophy, you murmur. Another word you know the shape of, but not the substance. Can anyone go in? You ask. The boy laughs, not mean, just amused. You need a subscription. Costs more than you or me will ever see. For the merchants, the rich ones, the ones who want to pretend they're not just about money. He looks at the building with something that might be longing, or contempt. Hard to tell with kids like this. My father used to work there, he says, cleaning before he died. He told me about it. The big round room with all the books, the dome above, with light coming through, statues of famous writers, Shakespeare, Milton, some Greek fellow, Homer. Surprising yourself, you ask? Yeah, that one, he says, scuffing his foot. Quietest place in Liverpool. Father said you could hear yourself thinking. Men sitting at tables, reading, not talking, not shouting, just reading. Like the whole world outside didn't exist. He shakes himself. A kid can't afford to get lost in memory too long. Anyway, you looking for something? I can show you around for a penny. You shake your head. Got a delivery to make. The address on the paper is further up. The street. You start walking again, but glance back once. At the Lysum. At the men in their clean coats walking up those steps. At the dome rising above the rooftops. 10,000 books. You can't read. Not really. Letters puzzle out simple words if you try, but real books? Those are for other people. People who had time to learn. People who didn't start working the moment they could walk. Your sister can read better than you. She learned somehow, somewhere, maybe at one of the charity schools before the rope factory. Sometimes she reads out loud. Signs, notices, occasional newspaper pages blown past in the street. 10,000 books. You try to imagine it. Walls stacked with words on words on words. Everything anyone ever thought, written down and kept safe. What do they read? History, probably. Wars, kings, empires. Philosophy, whatever that means exactly. Science, maybe. How things work. Why the stars move. What makes the wind blow. Things you'll never know. Things you don't have time to know. And those men walking in there every day to read them, to drink coffee and discuss philosophy beneath statues of dead poets, they probably don't even appreciate it. Take it for granted, the way you take the docks for granted, just another part of their world. It makes you angry somehow, not at them exactly, just at the gap. The distance between their world and yours feels wider than the street itself. They're inside, warm and dry, reading about ancient Greece, about philosophers and wars and ideas that don't put bread on the table. And you're outside carrying packages for sixpence, because if you don't work, you don't eat. The thought stirs something sharp in you at first. A brief flicker of anger, but it fades almost as quickly as it came. What's the point? This is how things are, how they've always been. Some people read books, some people carry them. The world sorts itself out that way and never asks your opinion. You make the delivery. The man who takes the package barely looks at you. He presses a sixpence into your palm and closes the door without a word. You stand there for a moment, coin warm in your hand, not quite ready to turn back toward home. The day is still young, or young enough, and you're on this side of the city, a part of Liverpool you don't usually see. There's no reason to rush back to the cellar, back to the damp air and the smell and the sound of your sister coughing. So you start walking, not toward home, away from it. As you go, the streets begin to change. The nicer buildings thin out. New brick gives way to older stone. Then the buildings themselves begin to disappear. The road opens up. And suddenly there are fields. Real fields. Grass, trees, open sky. You almost forgot what trees look like. This is the edge of Liverpool, where the city ends, or where it used to end. You can see construction everywhere. New houses going up, roads being cut into the earth, the city stretching outward, reaching with dirty fingers and claiming more land. But for now, there's still a strip of green, a final breath of something that isn't cobblestone and coal smoke. You see the windmills before you reach them. 3 of them, maybe 4. Their sails turn slowly in the breeze, steady and patient, grinding grain into flour the same way windmills have done for centuries. Liverpool used to have dozens of them. 74, someone once told you, scattered across the city and the land beyond it. Most are gone now, pulled down to make room for buildings, replaced by steam mills that work faster and don't care about the weather. But these are still here, still turning, still doing exactly what they were built to do. There's something comforting in that. In a city that never stops changing, that tears itself apart and rebuilds over and over, these windmills just keep working, making flour, so people can eat bread. Your grandmother probably saw windmills like these, your grandfather too, and his parents before him. The same motion, the same purpose, slow, steady work that doesn't hurry for anyone. You walk closer. There's a road here, unpaved, deep ruts from cartwheels pressed into the dirt. A signpost stands at the edge. London Road, it says, leading out of the city toward places you've never been, other towns, other lives, places you probably won't ever see. A few cottages dot the fields. Smoke curls gently from their chimneys. A cow grazes nearby, tearing calmly at the grass. It looks peaceful, almost beautiful, the kind of scene you might see in a painting, if paintings were something you ever saw. Then you notice something else, a structure standing alone in a field, wooden posts, a crossbeam, and something hanging from it. Not something, someone. You stop walking, your stomach tightens. The gallows, you've heard of this place. Gallows Mills, named for the obvious reason. This is where Liverpool hangs its criminals, where justice, such as it is, gets carried out in full view of anyone passing by. The body is too far away to see clearly. That's a mercy. You don't want to see it clearly. It's a man, most likely, someone who stole something, or killed someone, or did something the courts decided deserved death. Sometimes they leave them up there for days. Pour encourager les autres, as the French say. A warning. You've seen hangings before. Everyone in Liverpool has. They're public events, people bring their children. Vendors sell food. It's entertainment for those who can't afford the theatre. The last one you saw was 6 months ago, a man who killed his wife. The crowd was enormous, thousands pushing for a better view. When the trap dropped, there was a cheer, like at a race or a cockfight. You didn't cheer, you just stood there and watched a man die, and felt almost nothing. That was what frightened you most. Not the death, the numbness. But this is different. Seen from a distance, alone, the windmills turning quietly behind it. The scene feels smaller, quieter, more real. You think about the people in those cottages. Do they see the gallows every day? Do they hear the crowds when there's an execution? Do they smell whatever there is to smell when a body hangs too long in the sun? You think about the men who have died here over the years. Thieves, murderers, traitors, 4 Scottish rebels in 1715. You remember hearing about them once. Men who fought for the wrong king and paid the price. Did they see the windmills as they walked to the scaffold? Did they watch the sails turn while they waited for the rope? Did they think about bread baking somewhere nearby, flour being ground, ordinary life continuing while theirs was about to end? The wind picks up, the sails creak and groan, the body sways slightly, you turn away, you walk back toward the city, the fields fade into houses, the houses crowd together and become streets. The streets grow dirtier, louder, more familiar. By the time you reach the waterfront, the light is fading. Ships sit in silhouette against the grey sky. Warehouses sink into shadow. The smell of salt and sewage wraps around you like a blanket. Home. Your sister is awake when you arrive, sitting upright on the straw, the small bottle of medicine held carefully in her hand as if it might break. She looks at you and frowns slightly. "You're late," she says. "Got work? A delivery job?" You open your hand and show her the sixpence resting in your palm. She nods. She doesn't smile exactly, but something in her face eases. Money means survival. Survival means another day. "I went to the edge of the city," you tell her. "There are still fields out there, windmills, cows grazing, like the countryside. You don't mention the gallows." She doesn't need to know about that. "Windmills," she repeats. Her voice is still rough, but it doesn't rattle the way it did before. The medicine might actually be helping. "I remember windmills from when I was little, before we moved here." You look at her, surprised. You didn't know she remembered anything from before Liverpool. She was so young when your family came here. 3, maybe 4, practically a baby. "Where were we?" you ask. "Somewhere north," she says, shrugging slightly. "I don't remember the name. Just the windmill. It was near our house. I used to watch it through the window. The sails going round and round." She coughs, but it's small. Ordinary. Nothing like the wet, frightening sound from before. "There's a library in the city," you say, "a big one, 10,000 books." Her eyes sharpen at that. "Where?" "Bold Street. Up on the hill. It's for rich people, merchants. You have to pay to get in." She goes quiet, thinking. Something slow and careful moving behind her eyes. 10,000 books, she says softly. Can you imagine all those words? All those ideas just sitting there waiting for someone to read them? "No," you say. "I can't. I could read some of them," she says. "If they let me in. If it was free. I could read." She laughs then, thin and tired. The kind of sound that passes for laughter when you're too worn down for the real thing. "Maybe someday," she says. "When we're rich, sure, when we're rich." You both know that isn't going to happen. But it's nice to pretend. Nice to imagine a world where you could walk up those steps, through those doors, and sit beneath that dome reading books about philosophy in ancient Greece. Nice to imagine a world where your sister could read all 10,000 books if she wanted, where the only thing stopping her was time, not money. The church bells toll somewhere in the distance. 9 o'clock. Time for sleep. Your sister hands you the medicine bottle. There's still some left. Enough for a few more days, maybe. "Getting better," she says. "I think." "Good," you say. "That's good." You settle onto the cold floor. Your sister curls up on the straw. The single candle flickers, sputters, and goes out. Darkness fills the room. Before sleep comes, you think about what you saw today. The Lyceum with its dome and its columns and its 10,000 books. the gallows with its body swaying in the wind. The windmill's still turning after all these years. Liverpool is full of contrasts like that. Beauty and horror side by side, knowledge and ignorance, life and death, all tangled together, impossible to separate. You close your eyes. In your mind, the windmill's sails keep turning, round and round, grain into flour, flour into bread, bread into life. Maybe that's all there is, the grinding, the turning, the work that never really ends. But at least there are still windmills. At least there are still fields at the edge of the city. At least there's a thin strip of green before the cobblestones take over completely. At least there's that. Your breathing slows. Your muscles loosen. Sleep pulls you down, slowly, gently, into the dark. Outside, somewhere far away, the wind keeps blowing. The sails keep turning. The city keeps growing. And the gallows keeps waiting for the next man who steps out of line. The fever came to the court on a Wednesday. You didn't know it at first. You only noticed that the woman with the baby wasn't at the pump that morning. You noticed that the baby wasn't crying. That was strange, because that baby cried constantly, day and night. A thin, reedy wail that slipped through walls and into your dreams. Silence from that corner of the court felt wrong, like a clock that had stopped ticking. By Thursday, you understood why. The woman's husband came up from their cellar with a face the colour of old cheese. He said she was burning up, said she couldn't keep anything down, said the baby wouldn't stop crying now, wouldn't stop no matter what he did, but the crying sounded different. Weaker, fevered, the word. Spread through the court like smoke. By noon, everyone knew. By evening, everyone was afraid. Fever in Liverpool isn't just sickness, it's a slow death sentence. It moves through families like fire through dry wood. One person falls ill, then another, until whole households disappear. Whole courts, whole streets, they have names for it. Typhus, cholera, consumption. The doctors argue about which is which and what causes what. It doesn't matter much when you're the one lying in a cellar, burning up, while your family watches and can't help. Liverpool is the unhealthiest town in England. That isn't opinion, it's fact. The doctors have charts and numbers and reports sent to Parliament to prove it. The average working person here dies at 17. In the countryside, people live into their 30s. In London, they make it to 25, sometimes more. But Liverpool kills you young. Some of it is the work, the docks, the factories, the rope works and sugar refineries. Labour that grinds your body down before it's fully grown. Some of it is the food or the lack of it. You can't fight sickness on an empty stomach. But mostly it's this. The courts, the cellars, 40 people sharing one privy. No drainage, no ventilation, no way for the filth to go anywhere except down into the ground, where it seeps through stone and into the places where people live. And the city goes on. The doctors know this, some of them anyway. There's a man named Duncan who's been making noise about it, writing reports, giving speeches, standing up in rooms full of men who don't want to hear what he's saying. He talks about the cesspits and the sewers, about the thousands of people living in holes that should have been condemned years ago. He talks about air and water and waste, and how sickness follows filth as naturally as night follows day. Nobody listens. Or they listen and don't care. The merchants don't want to pay for improvements. The landlords don't want to lose their rent, and the poor don't have any power to make anyone do anything. So nothing changes. The fever keeps coming, wave after wave, and people keep dying. Some people say it's the bad air, the miasma they call it. The foul smells rising up from sewage and rotting garbage and horse manure in the streets. Breathe it in, they say, and it gets inside you, corrupts your humours, makes you sick. Other people say it's the Irish. That's the popular theory. The Irish brought it. The Irish carry it. The Irish are a plague themselves, swarming off the boats from Dublin and Cork, bringing their diseases with them like extra luggage. You hear this talk everywhere. In the pubs, in the market, on the docks. Even some of the other dock workers, men who have nothing themselves, look at the Irish with suspicion, like they're less than human, like they deserve what they're getting. It's not true. You know it's not true. The Irish aren't more diseased than anyone else. They just live in worse conditions, packed tighter, eating less, working harder for less pay. Of course they get sick more often, anyone would, but fear needs a target, and the Irish are easy targets. By Friday, the woman with the baby is dead. Her husband carries her body up from the cellar, wrapped in a sheet that was probably white once. Now it's grey with use, spotted with stains you don't want to think about. He can barely walk. He stumbles, he weeps. The baby is tucked under one arm, silent now, which somehow feels worse than the crying ever was. A cart comes to take the body away. You don't know where. To a church maybe, to whatever potter's field they use for the poor. The burial grounds in this city are so full that sometimes the bodies don't stay buried. Sometimes heavy rain brings them back up, floating to the surface like they're trying to escape. You never knew the woman's name. She never told you. In the 2 weeks she lived in your cellar, she barely spoke at all. She just sat there with her baby, staring at the walls, waiting for something that never came. Now she's gone. Her husband leaves the court that same day. He takes the baby and disappears into the maze of Liverpool streets. You don't know where he's going. You don't ask. Maybe he has family somewhere. Maybe he's heading to the workhouse. Maybe he's just walking until he can't walk anymore. It doesn't matter. What matters is that there's an empty space in the cellar now. Empty spaces fill quickly in Liverpool. Your sister watches all of this from her corner. She's better than she was. The medicine you bought is doing something. Her cough is still there, but it's lighter now. Less blood. More air. She can sit up without getting dizzy. She can eat without throwing everything back up. She's not cured. You're not foolish enough to think that. Consumption doesn't cure. It waits. But she's stronger than she was a week ago. And that's something. We should leave, she says quietly. After the body is gone. After the husband disappears with the baby. We should find somewhere else. And go where? She doesn't have an answer. Neither do you. Somewhere else just means another court, another cellar, another group of strangers packed together underground. The fever is everywhere in Liverpool. Moving won't save you. It'll just give you new neighbours to watch die. So you stay. The days pass. The fever doesn't spread here, or at least it doesn't spread yet. In the court, things return to what passes for normal. The pump keeps pumping. The privy keeps stinking. Life goes on because what else is it going to do? But something has changed. Attention. You can feel it in the way people move around each other, in the way they hold their breath when they pass someone new, in the way mothers pull their children close and hurry indoors at the first hint of a cough. Nobody trusts anyone. Not really. Your neighbour today could be your death sentence tomorrow. Every sneeze feels suspicious. Every fever feels like the beginning of the... George, the old man who shares your cellar, starts burning herbs in a tin cup every evening. He says it clears the bad air, purifies the miasma. You don't know if it works, but the smell is sharp and bitter, and it covers the other smells for a while, which is something. The woman who runs the court starts checking on the cellars every morning, making sure nobody's died in the night, making sure nobody's hiding symptoms that could spread to everyone else. She isn't cruel about it, just practical. If someone gets sick, they need to be out. That's the rule. Protect the many by sacrificing the few. You keep your sister hidden as much as you can. Her cough is better, but it's still there, still noticeable. If anyone decides she might be contagious, you could both be thrown out, onto the streets, into the workhouse, into God knows where. You hear stories filtering in from other parts of the city, other courts, other cellars. There's an outbreak in the Irish Quarter, people say. Started near the docks, spread through the lodging houses, people dropping like flies. 10 dead, 20 more every day. The doctors are overwhelmed, or maybe they just don't care. It's hard to tell the difference. Sometimes a doctor will race across town to treat a merchant's headache, but won't set foot in a cellar to help a dying child, and the city keeps breathing. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. You go to the docks every morning hoping there will be work. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Lately the ships have been coming in more regularly, which is good for your wages but bad for other reasons. Most of the ships now come from Ireland. Everyone has heard about the famine, something wrong with the potatoes, rotting in the ground. The crop that fed half of Ireland is failing and the people are failing with it. 1 million dead already, some say. Maybe more. No one really knows. The numbers are too large to picture clearly, too heavy to hold in your mind for very long without feeling overwhelmed. And now the survivors are coming to Liverpool. 300,000 passed through last year alone, according to the papers. 300,000 hollow-eyed, starving, desperate people. all of them fleeing something worse than this city. Most of them move on eventually to America, to Australia, to anywhere but here. But tens of thousands stay. They stay because they have no money left, because Liverpool, for all its filth and sickness, is still better than dying in a ditch in County Cork. You see them on the quays, the new arrivals, thin as skeletons, some of them, cheeks sunken, eyes too large for their faces. They stumble off the boats like sleepwalkers and stand there blinking at the city as if they're not quite sure it's real. The ships themselves are nightmares, coffin ships people call them. Passengers packed so tightly they can barely move, disease spreading through the holds like fire through dry timber. Sometimes a third of them die before reaching land. The bodies are dumped overboard. No burial, no grave, just gone. The ones who survive aren't much better off, weakened by the voyage, carrying whatever sickness they picked up along the way. They step onto the docks and immediately become Liverpool's problem. Some have enough money to keep moving. Liverpool is just a pause for them, a place to change ships, a few days on solid ground before continuing on. But most have nothing. They spent everything just getting here. Now they're stuck. No money to go further, no way back, just the cellars and the fever and a city that doesn't particularly want them. One morning you watch a family come down the gangplank. A man, a woman, 3 children. The oldest might be 8, the youngest is carried because she's too weak to walk. They have one bundle of belongings wrapped in cloth, everything they own tied up in a dirty sheet. The man asks a dock worker where they can find lodging. His Irish accent is thick. The dock. Worker points vaguely inland and walks away. You think about helping, about telling them which streets to avoid, which landlords will cheat them, which courts might have room, which are so crowded that people sleep piled on top of each other. But you don't. You have your own problems, your own sister, your own survival. And what would you really tell them anyway? That they've traded one nightmare for another? That the streets here are paved, but paved with horse manure and desperation? That the cellars are dark and damp and full of sickness? The truth won't help. They'll learn soon enough. You turn away and go back to work. Hauling cotton is hard, but it's familiar. Your body knows the movements even when your mind drifts. Lift, carry, set down, return. A rhythm you fall into because stopping isn't an option. A week passes, then another. The fever in the Irish Quarter burns itself out eventually, or maybe it just moves somewhere else. These things come in waves. They crash over the city, kill whoever they're going to kill, and then recede for a while. 5,000 dead this year, someone says on the docks. 6,000, someone else argues. More, says a third. The numbers change depending on who's talking. You don't know if any of it is true. Who counts the poor? Who keeps track of what happens in the cellars? When a dock worker dies of typhus, does anyone write it down? When a child wastes away in a lodging house, does anyone notice? The rich are counted. When a merchant dies, there's a procession. Black horses, fine clothes, a monument in a churchyard. When one of you dies, there's a cart and a hole in the ground that fills with rain. Your sister keeps improving slowly, day by day. She can walk to the pump now without getting winded. She can climb the cellar stairs without stopping. There's a bit of colour in her cheeks again, enough that you notice it. She's still thin, still coughing, still fragile in a way that makes you want to keep her wrapped up and hidden from the world. But she's alive. She's fighting. The medicine is running low. You'll need more soon. That means more money, more work, more hours in ship holds while your body protests. But you'll do it. There isn't really a choice. One evening after work, you take her for a walk, not far, just around the court, up the passage and out onto the street, a few blocks toward the waterfront where the air is slightly less foul. She moves slowly, carefully, but she's smiling a little. And for that short walk, under the dimming sky, it almost feels like something resembling hope. The sun is setting over the river. Orange and pink streak across a sky that is mostly grey, the colours soft and muted, like they don't want to draw too much attention to themselves. It's beautiful, if you ignore everything else, the smoke, the smell, the warehouses pressing in on the water. Your sister holds your arm as you walk, partly because she still needs the support, partly, you think, just because she wants to hold on to something solid, The city feels quieter at this hour. The day workers have gone home. The night workers haven't come out yet. There's a pause, a lull, as if Liverpool itself is taking a slow breath before starting all over again. "I've been thinking," she says. "That's dangerous," you say, and she gives your arm a weak punch in response. "I'm serious," she says. "I've been thinking about what happens next." Next. The word hangs there between you. "After I'm better," she adds. "Really better." What do we do then? You don't have an answer. You've been so focused on getting through each day that you haven't allowed yourself to think beyond it. Planning for a future feels pointless when the present takes so much effort just to survive. But she's looking at you now with those eyes of hers, sharp and tired and older than they should be, waiting for something. "I don't know," you admit. "Keep working, keep surviving, same as always." She stops walking, you stop with her. Through a narrow gap between two warehouses you can see the river. Grey water, restless, moving steadily toward the docks. A ship is coming in, its sails catching the last light of the evening. "That's not enough," she says. "There has to be more. More than the cellars, more than the docks, more than just surviving until we can't survive anymore." "Like what?" you ask. "I don't know," she says, frustration creeping into her voice. "But I want to find out. I want to try." You think about the Lyceum, with its dome and its columns and its thousands of books, sitting quietly behind locked doors. You think about the blind school, about Edward Rushton teaching children how to build lives for themselves. You think about the old sailor in the church who spent the rest of his life trying to undo the harm he'd once helped cause. Some people do find more, not most, but some. The lucky ones, the stubborn ones, the ones who refuse to believe that this is all there is. "Okay," you say finally, "when you're better, really better, we'll figure something out. I don't know what yet, but something." She smiles. It's a small smile, but it's real. There's promise in it. You stand there a little longer, watching the ship glide toward the docks, and then you turn back toward the court, back toward the cellar, back toward the life you're still stuck in, at least for now. But something feels lighter as you walk, as if the future isn't just a wall you're heading toward, as if there might be something on the other side of it. The fever is still out there, the disease, the death, the grinding poverty that chews people up and spits them out. Liverpool is still Liverpool, but your sister is getting better, and she's making plans. That night, you fall asleep to the sound of her breathing, still a little wet, still a little rough, but steady, strong. The sound of someone who's decided not to give up. Maybe that's enough for now. A week passes. Your sister goes back to the rope factory. Not full days, half. Shifts. 4 hours of twisting hemp until her hands are sore and her lungs start to protest. But she comes home walking instead of staggering. She eats without being forced. She sleeps through the night without coughing herself awake. She's getting better, really better. And you start to believe it might last. The fever moved through the court like a storm. The woman with the baby, 2 families from the east cellars, an old man who'd been coughing for months. The bodies went out on carts, and new people moved in before the old ones were even cold in the ground. That's how it works. Liverpool doesn't pause for death. It just keeps churning forward. But your sister made it. You both did. And somehow that feels like a victory. Work has been steady. Not good exactly, but steady. 3 days at the docks this week, another unloading a warehouse near Clarence Dock. Your muscles no longer scream. They've settled into a dull, constant ache you barely notice. Your hands are calloused. Your back only hurts when you think about it. Today is different. After the morning selection, the foreman pulls you aside. He has a job that doesn't involve the ships, a delivery run across town, cargo coming in on the railway that needs to be moved to a warehouse near the waterfront. Easy work, he says, and better pay. Railway. The word feels strange in your head. You've heard of it, of course. Everyone has. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway, steam engines moving faster than any horse, carrying people and goods in a way that still feels unnatural to some. The older dock workers don't trust it. Say it's dangerous, say it's wrong, say the smoke will poison the air even more than it already is. But the railway keeps running, every day, changing the city in ways no one fully understands yet. You've never seen it, and as you agree to the job, You realize that today, for the first time in a long while, you're about to see something new, not up close. The station is on Lime Street, on the edge of the city centre, and you've never had any reason to go that way before. The docks have always been your whole world. The waterfront, the narrow courts and damp cellars where people like you live. Lime Street might as well be on the moon for all the difference it makes to your life. At least it was, until today. The foreman gives you directions, simple and quick, and tells you to meet the other workers outside the station entrance. You nod, turn, and start walking. The farther you go from the waterfront, the more the streets begin to change. There are fewer carts piled high with cargo, fewer men with the bent shoulders and heavy steps of dock workers. There are more shops now, more solid, respectable-looking buildings, more people wearing clothes without patches or holes. You feel out of place, too visible, as if everyone can see exactly who you are and where you come from just by looking at you. But no one does. Or if they do, they don't care. The city is too busy for that. Too many people moving in too many directions to spare a thought for one more shabby young man walking somewhere he doesn't belong. And then you hear it, a sound unlike anything you've ever heard before, a deep, steady chuffing that seems to rise up from the ground itself, the hiss of steam escaping under pressure, the sharp screech of metal scraping against metal, a sound that makes your teeth ache without you quite knowing why. You round the corner, and there it is. Lime Street Station. The building is enormous, neoclassical, the kind of architecture you've seen on the town hall and the grand offices where merchants conduct their business. Tall columns, wide pediments, stone arranged to display wealth and confidence and power. But it isn't the building that stops you, it's what's behind it, the locomotive. You've never seen anything like it. A massive thing of iron, black and gleaming, crouched on the tracks like some mechanical animal. Steam pours from its stack in a thick white column that rises straight up into the grey Liverpool sky. The tracks beneath it are made of iron too, two parallel lines stretching away from the platform and vanishing into a dark tunnel carved directly through the rock of the hillside. The Wapping Tunnel. Someone once told you, the first tunnel dug beneath an entire city. Men worked underground for years with picks and shovels, cutting through stone so that goods could be moved from the docks to the factories without fighting their way through crowded streets. The locomotive hisses again. Steam bursts from somewhere deep inside it. The whole machine seems to breathe, slow and heavy, as if it's alive, as if it's waiting. People are everywhere. Workers in rough clothes like yours. Passengers in fine coats and polished shoes, men in top hats, women in dresses that probably cost more than you earn in a year, children tugging at their parents' hands, pointing and shouting, their voices sharp with excitement. Everyone is staring at the locomotive, wonder and fear mixed together on their faces, the same feeling tightening in your own chest. This is the future. You understand that suddenly, without quite knowing how. Not the docks, not the tall sailing ships with their masts and rigging and dependence on the wind, not horses dragging carts through streets thick with mud and manure. This, steam and iron, machines that move on their own, speed no living thing can match. They say the men who built the railway held a competition years ago, the Rainhill trials. Inventors brought their machines to prove which one was best. The winner was called the Rocket, built by a man named Stephenson. It reached 36 miles an hour. 36. You can barely imagine moving that fast. Most people never will, not in their entire lives. But this machine did it, and now machines like it do it every day. Someone bumps into you from behind. You've been standing in the middle of the walkway, mouth open, staring like a fool. Move along, the man says. Some of us have trains to catch. You step aside. He pushes past you without a glance. His suit probably costs more than everything you own combined. To him, you're nothing. Just something in the way. But you're not thinking about him. You're thinking about your sister. About what she said that night by the river. About there having to be more than cellars and docks and just surviving until you couldn't survive anymore. She didn't know what she meant then. Neither did you. But maybe this is part of it. This railway, this new world built from steam and iron. The world is changing. You can feel it. You can hear it in the steady chuff of the engine and the hiss of escaping steam and the shrill cry of metal on iron. Liverpool is changing too. It has been for years, really. But the railway makes it impossible to ignore. The old ways are fading. The windmills that once stood on the city's edges are disappearing, replaced by steam-powered factories. The sailing ships that made Liverpool rich are giving way to steamships that don't wait on the wind. Even the docks are being rebuilt, expanded, reshaped to handle the new kinds of cargo arriving by rail. Everything is changing, and you're standing here, watching it happen. A whistle blows, sharp, piercing. The locomotive shudders, groans, and begins to move, slowly at first, so slowly you could walk alongside it. Then faster, the wheels turn, the smokestack belches, the carriages behind it roll forward one by one, a long chain of motion that feels almost impossible. So much weight, so many people, all of it moving without horses, without sails, driven by fire and water and iron alone. You watch until the train disappears into the tunnel, until the last carriage is swallowed by darkness, until the sound fades into a distant, steady rumble deep beneath the city. Then someone is shouting your name, not your actual name, just, "Hey, you, the dock lad, over here." The voice cuts through your thoughts, pulls you back from the iron tracks and the dark tunnel and the moving future you were watching a moment ago. The other workers are gathered near a loading platform now, standing in loose clusters, waiting for the next train to arrive, the one carrying the cargo you're meant to move. You walk over and take your place among them. Your body knows this work. It doesn't matter where you are, docks or station, ship or train. Lift and carry, lift and carry. The movements settle into you easily, familiar and automatic. Your hands find the weight, your shoulders adjust, but your mind isn't here. It's somewhere else entirely, somewhere racing along iron rails toward Manchester at speeds that still feel unreal, like something dreamed rather than built. The work turns out to be easier than you expected. Railway cargo isn't like ship cargo. Everything is packed to a standard size. Crates and barrels designed to fit neatly into the carriages. Less struggling with awkward shapes. Less climbing ladders into dark holes. Just a steady back and forth rhythm. Load, carry, set down, repeat. Again and again until the train is empty and the warehouse is full. At the end of it, you're paid 3 shillings. More than you'd earn for a full day on the docks. And the foreman tells you there may be more work like this. The railway is expanding, new lines being built, more goods moving faster than ever before. They need men who can handle cargo quickly, men who understand weight and balance and repetition. Some of the dock workers mutter about it. They don't trust the railway. They're afraid it will take their jobs, and maybe one day it will. Maybe the time will come when ships aren't the main way goods move anymore, when docks shrink and railways spread across the country like veins, when men like you have to adapt or be left behind. But that day isn't today. Today, there's work. More work, not less. The railway brings goods into Liverpool faster than ever, and those goods still need to be loaded onto ships. Ships still arrive from America and the Caribbean and places you'll never see. They still need to be unloaded by hand. The whole system is growing larger, faster, more tangled, and maybe somewhere in all that movement there's room for people willing to learn something new. You think about your sister as you start walking back toward the waterfront, about her frustration with the life you've both been living, about her wanting something more. She can read, properly read. She learned at the charity school, before your parents died, before she had to go to the rope factory to keep you both alive. Maybe there's a future in that. Not at the docks, not in the cellars, something else. Something that uses her mind instead of wearing her body down piece by piece. The thought stays with you as you walk. The world is changing. That's the phrase that keeps repeating in your head. The world is changing. And maybe the people who change with it have a chance. Or maybe not. Maybe that's just a story you're telling yourself to make the walk feel lighter. Maybe the rich will stay rich and the poor will stay poor. And the railway will just be another way for the people on top to make money off the people underneath. But still, you saw it. The locomotive, the station, the crowds. People moving between Liverpool and Manchester in 90 minutes instead of half a day. You saw the future arriving on iron wheels, and it didn't look like death. It looked like possibility. By the time you reach the court, the sun is setting. Orange and pink light filters through the smoke haze. The familiar smells return. Privies, coal fires, too many bodies packed into too small a space. Your sister is already home, sitting on the steps outside the cellar entrance waiting for you. "You got work?" she says. Not really a question. She can always tell. "Railway job," you tell her. "Loading cargo at Lime Street." Her eyes widen. She's heard of the railway. Everyone has. But like you, she's never seen it. What's it like? You search for words, for a way to describe the locomotive, the steam, the noise, the feeling of watching something that big move on its own power. "Loud," you say finally, "and fast, and strange, like nothing I've ever seen." She goes quiet, thinking it over. "Do you think it'll change things?" she asks. "For people like us?" You don't know. You honestly don't. The world has been unfair for as long as anyone remembers. Why should a new machine change that? But you think about the foreman's words, about more work, about expansion, and you think about the workers you saw at the station. Railway workers, jobs that didn't exist before. Maybe, you say, maybe it could. She nods slowly, turning the idea over the way she always does, carefully, thoughtfully. "I want to see it," she says. "When I'm stronger, will you take me, you think?" About the long walk across town, about the streets that felt unfamiliar, about the crowds that looked right through you. "Yeah," you say, "I'll take you." She smiles, that same small, real smile from the waterfront. Good. You sit beside her on the steps. The stone is cold beneath you. The air smells the same as it always does. Smoke, sewage, the sourness of poverty. But the sky is still orange and pink. The light is soft. And your sister is beside you, breathing steady and strong. The future is coming, one iron wheel at a time. And maybe, just maybe, there will be room in it for people like you. Down in the cellar, George is already snoring. The new family who moved in after the fever is settling for the night. Somewhere in the court, a baby cries. Not the thin, desperate wail of sickness, just the ordinary complaint of a healthy child who doesn't want to sleep. You stay on the steps a little longer, watching the light fade, feeling the day's work sink deep into your bones. Then you help your sister down the stairs and into the cellar. You take your time with it, one step at a time, steady and careful, making sure her footing is sure before moving on. The cellar greets you the way it always does, with its low ceiling and damp walls and the familiar smell of earth and old stone. It isn't much, but it's shelter. It's a place to rest. Tomorrow there might be more railway work. Tomorrow you might earn enough to set a few pennies aside, just a small stack, but something. Tomorrow your sister might be strong enough to work a full shift without stopping. Tomorrow the fever might return, or the work might dry up, or any one of 100 quiet disasters might come creeping in without warning. That's how life works here. But tonight, right now, there's a roof over your head, food in your stomach, and a sister who's getting stronger day by day. In Liverpool in the 1830s, that isn't nothing. It's actually quite a lot. The darkness settles in around you. The cellar. Walls seem to close slightly, not threatening, just close and familiar. Somewhere far off, if you listen closely, if you strain your ears past the sounds of breathing and settling bodies, you can almost hear it. The distant whistle of a train heading out into the night, thin and fading, like a sound meant for another world. A month passes, then another. Time moves the way it always does, quietly and without asking. Summer gives way to autumn. The few scraggly trees near the waterfront change colour and lose their leaves, which fall into the gutters and are trampled into the mud. The Liverpool rain grows colder. What was once merely uncomfortable turns sharp and biting. Smoke thickens as people burn more fuel to keep warm, hanging low in the streets like fog that never fully lifts. The days grow shorter. Morning begins in darkness. Evening comes early, slipping in around 4 or 5 o'clock, until it feels as though night is the city's natural state and daylight is just a brief interruption. Life in the court settles into a rhythm that almost feels like routine. Work when there's work, rest when there isn't, eat when you can, sleep when your body refuses to stay awake any longer. Your sister is well now, not just better, well, truly well. She works full shifts at the rope factory, comes home tired but not hollowed out. She eats with appetite instead of obligation. She sleeps through the night without coughing herself awake. The colour has returned to her cheeks and there's light in her eyes again. When she laughs now, it doesn't end in wheezing. She's alive. You're both alive. And in this city, that matters. You kept your promise about the railway. Took her to Lime Street on a Sunday afternoon when neither of you had to work. You watched her face as she saw the locomotive for the first time. Watched her eyes widen, her mouth fall open, her body lean forward as if she were trying to take it all in at once. She didn't say much, just stood there, watching, thinking, letting it settle. On the walk home, she told you she wanted to learn more. About machines, about how things work, about the new world being built out of steam and iron. She doesn't know how yet, doesn't know where to begin, but she knows she wants something different, something beyond the rope factory, something that uses her mind. You told her you'd help however you could. It isn't much. You don't have money or influence or connections, but you can work extra shifts. You can save a few pennies when possible. Maybe one day it will add up to something. Maybe one day she'll find her way out, or maybe not. Maybe the world will keep grinding forward and leave you both behind. But at least you're trying. At least you haven't given up. And here, in this city, in this time, that counts. The fever took so many others. The woman with the baby. Families from the east side of the court. Old men who had been holding on by habit more than strength. You watched the carts come and go, carrying bodies wrapped in sheets that used to be white. You watched new families move in before the old ones were even cold in the ground. But your sister made it. You both made it. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, you let yourself feel grateful for that. Tonight is quiet. The court is settling down. The sounds of the day fade away one by one. Carts stop rattling through the streets. Vendors pack up. The church bells ring for the last time and then fall silent until morning. You're sitting on the same cellar steps you've sat on so many times before. The same cold stone beneath you. The same view of the pump, the privy, the walls pressing in. But something feels different tonight. Softer. The air is cool but not harsh. There's no wind. The smoke from the chimneys rises straight up instead of stinging your eyes. Above the rooftops, the sky fades from grey to purple to deep blue. The colours bleed into each other gently, without sharp edges, like a watercolour painting you once saw in a shop window. A few stars appear, faint, almost lost in the haze, but there. Distant points of light that have been shining for longer than anyone can remember and will keep shining long after Liverpool is gone. The same stars sailors follow, the same stars hanging over every place on earth. You've never spent much time thinking about stars. There was never room for it. But tonight, they make you feel small in a way that isn't entirely unpleasant. Your sister is inside now, already asleep, her breathing steady, strong. And for the moment, that's enough. She went down early tonight, said she was tired in a good way, the kind of tired that settles into your muscles softly, without pain or fear attached to it. The kind that comes from honest work, from a full stomach, from a body that is finally doing what it's meant to do, instead of fighting itself every moment of the day. She didn't linger on the steps, just smiled, squeezed your hand once, and disappeared down into the cellar. George is down there too, still paying his 2p a night, still breathing that same rattling breath. It never seems to improve, never seems to get worse. It's just there, constant, familiar, like the drip of water or the creak of old wood, part of the background noise of your life now, something you barely notice unless it stops. The new family has settled in, a husband and wife and 3 children. The oldest looks about 7, maybe a little younger. They came from somewhere in Wales. Their English is rough and hesitant. They keep mostly to themselves, but the children have started playing with the other children in the court, chasing each other around the pump, laughing in that way children do no matter where they are. The wife has started nodding at you when you pass each other, just a small acknowledgement. That's how it begins. That's how people fold themselves into a place like this. People come and people go. Some die, some move on, some simply disappear one morning without explanation. But the court stays, the cellar stays, and life somehow goes on. You think about everything you've seen over the past few months. The docks, with their endless movement and noise. The ships crowding the river, coming in heavy with cargo. The cotton bales, each one weighing as much as a man, moved by hand one after another until your arms burn and your back feels like it might split. The hiring foremen who look at you the way farmers look at livestock, pointing you out or turning you away with a flick of a finger, deciding whether you eat today or not. You think about the town hall, that grand building with its dome and its columns and the statue of Minerva looking down at the city as if she owns it. In a way, she does. Commerce, war, wisdom. The three things Liverpool was built on. The three things that made it rich, powerful and hard. You think about the market, the crush of bodies, the shouting voices, the smells layered on top of each other, fish and meat and vegetables, sweat and smoke and refuse, the pickpockets slipping through the crowd, the wealthy housekeepers and the desperate poor pressed together in one shifting mass, all trying to feed themselves for one more day. You think about the church, St. Nicholas, its spire reaching up into the sky, the sailors' church that has watched over the waterfront for generations, the bells that wake you in the morning and mark the passing of each hour. The churchyard packed so tightly with graves that there's barely room for more. Too many names, too many lives. You think about the school for the blind, that quiet building where Edward Rushton taught children that their lives didn't end with what they'd lost, where people who couldn't see learned to work with their hands and support themselves. A small island of kindness in a city that doesn't offer much of it. You think about the library, the Lyceum with its dome and its 10,000 books, a place you'll probably never enter, a place full of words. You may never read, but it exists. And that matters. It means Liverpool isn't only about money and ships and profit. It means someone, somewhere, believes in something else. You think about the windmills on London Road, or what's left of them. Most are gone now, torn down to make space for factories and warehouses, but you remember them from childhood, watching the sails turn slowly in the wind, hearing the creak of wood and gears, a slower world, a quieter one, before steam and iron took over. And you think about the railway, the locomotive at Lime Street, the sound of it, the power of it, the way it felt to stand there and watch something new being born. That feeling hasn't left you. It keeps circling back, especially at night. The world is changing. You can feel it in your bones, in the new kinds of work, in the old things disappearing, in the way people talk about speed and machines and futures that didn't exist before. Maybe there's room in that new world for people like you. Maybe there isn't, but the possibility exists. The door isn't shut yet, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes hope is nothing more than refusing to stop. But right now, none of that matters. Right now, it's just you and the evening air and the fading light. The city is settling down around you. Your breathing slows, in and out, in and out. The cold from the stone steps seeps through your trousers, but you don't mind. You've known colder. This feels almost comfortable. The stars are brighter now, more of them visible as the sky darkens. You wonder what they look like over open fields, where the air is clean and the horizon is wide, where people live longer, where water doesn't taste of rust and smoke. Maybe someday you'll see that, or maybe not. Maybe Liverpool is your whole life. Maybe you'll never go beyond these streets and docks and courts. Plenty of people don't. Plenty of people never do. But tonight that's all right. Tonight you're alive, your sister is alive, and the future is still unopened. The sounds of the court fade away. Voices quiet. Footsteps disappear into doorways. Candles are blown out one by one. Darkness settles over everything like a blanket. You should go inside, get some sleep. Tomorrow might bring work or nothing at all. Tomorrow might bring 4 shillings or none. But for a few more minutes you stay where you are, watching the stars, listening to the quiet, feeling the cold, letting the day finally gently come to an end. This is Liverpool. This is your life. This is 18 and something, and you are a dock worker living in a cellar beneath a crowded court where every day is shaped by work, hunger, and the simple effort to keep going. Every morning you wake not because you want to, but because you must, and every night you lie down hoping that tomorrow will be no worse than today. But you are still here, still breathing, still standing beneath the same sky that people have stood beneath for thousands of years. The same stars that shone over farmers and sailors and labourers long before Liverpool was ever built are shining above you now. That has to mean something, even if you don't know what that something is. You think for a moment about the listener, somewhere far away, somewhere warm and quiet, lying in a soft bed with clean sheets, a pillow that smells like soap instead of damp straw, breathing air that doesn't burn your lungs, drinking water that doesn't taste of rust or rot. What a strange world that must be. What a different kind of life. If you could speak to them, you wouldn't lecture or scold. You would simply tell them to notice it, to appreciate the clean air, the fresh water, the quiet nights, to appreciate sleeping without fear, waking without pain, living without the constant threat of hunger or fever. Because it wasn't always like this. Because not so long ago, people lived underground and worked until their bodies failed and died young and thought themselves lucky if they survived into adulthood. And in some ways, Liverpool is still out there. The streets may be cleaner now, the cellars filled in, the railway grown into something that stretches across countries and oceans, but the struggle never truly disappears. People still fight to survive, still hope for something better, still look up at the stars and wonder if tomorrow will be different from today. That's the quiet truth of history. It isn't finished. It isn't sealed away. It's the foundation everything else stands on. The lives and deaths and efforts of people who came before. And now, you are part of that story too. A young dock worker in 1800 and something Liverpool. Someone who survived the fever. Someone who kept his sister alive. Someone who saw the future arrive on iron wheels and felt, briefly, that things might change. Your story doesn't have an ending yet, not a final one. And if this moment, this quiet pause on the cellar steps, were all anyone ever knew of you, at least it would be peaceful. At least you would not be afraid. You stand slowly, your muscles protest, your joints crack softly in the cold night air. The stars are as bright as they're going to get through the smoke and haze. It's time to go inside, time to rest. The cellar feels warm compared to the outside. Bodies generate heat, and there are enough bodies here to keep the cold away. Your sister is curled on her straw mattress, breathing slow and steady. George snores gently in his corner. The Welsh family lies quiet nearby. You settle onto your own mattress. The straw crinkles beneath you. The smell is familiar now, not pleasant but known. Familiar enough to feel almost safe. This is home, for better or worse. Your eyes close. The sounds of the cellar drift around you. George is snoring. Someone shifting in their sleep. Water dripping steadily from somewhere in the dark. These sounds have been with you so long they no longer demand attention. They fade into the background, becoming part of you. And after everything, after the hunger, the fear, the labor, the long walks through dirty streets and the heavy bales on your shoulders, your body finally does what it knows how to do. It lets go. The tension eases from your shoulders. The ache in your back dulls. Your breathing slows, deepens, in and out, in and out. Liverpool is still out there, the docks and the ships, the railway and the markets, the courts and the cellars, the grand buildings and the narrow alleys, past, present and future tangled together in one restless city. But none of that can reach you now. Now there is only darkness, quiet. The slow, gentle drift towards sleep, like sinking into warm water, like being carried, like finally stopping after a very long journey. Your face softens, your jaw unclenches, your hands, rough, calloused, tired, lie still beside you. They have worked enough for today. They are allowed to rest. Your breathing finds the same rhythm as your sister's. Two people who survived together, resting together, dreaming whatever small dreams are possible. Somewhere far away a train whistle sounds, distant, lonely, full of promise. Tomorrow will come, it always does, but tonight you rest. Tonight you let go. Tonight you sleep. And if you are listening now, lying in your own bed in your own time, you can let that same heaviness settle into your limbs. Feel the support beneath you. Feel the warmth around you. Feel the safety of this moment. You are here. You are safe. The past can sleep too. For now.